Tonight, we walk with wolves. The snow has begun to fall over Winterfell, soft as dust, and your cloak draws tighter as the wind moves like memory through the gates. This isn't just a story. It's the kind you fall asleep to while empires fall forgotten behind walls of fog. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Every week we wander deeper into dust-covered kingdoms, fading ink, and shadowed names. Comment where you're listening from and what hour finds you. We love hearing from sleepy historians around the world. Now dim the lights, turn on a soft fan, and ask yourself, where would you have belonged in this forgotten world? The snow falls slower now, like parchment torn into white dust and scattered over old stone. You stand just beyond the gate of Winterfell, the iron hinges groaning behind you like some old throat trying to speak again after centuries in silence. The wood there is gray, veined as ash, and scraped by whetstones and wolves' claws alike. Step forward softly. The wind curls beneath your cloak like a hush wrapped tight around your ribs, breathing for you, almost. Each breath here changes. Just once outside these walls, your breath was sharp and quick, visible like candle smoke in winter light. But here, it slows, thickens, becomes sacred, because here, even air remembers. You place a hand to the stone, Winterfell's wall rare among keeps, grown from heat as much as frost. Warm stone, they used to call it. A mystery. No maester could ever quite explain how the very bones of this place retain warmth through the bitterest hours. Some say a fire runs beneath. Others whisper of something older still from the first days, when the ground itself listened to the trees. You feel it now, not heat, not cold, something else. A humming warmth, drowsy and ancient, curled like a sleeping wolf just beneath your fingertips. Snow collects in your eyelashes and melts before it drips. High above, the gray towers of Winterfell sink into the sky as if they've always been there. Like something dreamt, like roots that grew upward into stone. Between them, at their highest bridges, crows perch, black on white, and one of them stares. There are doors here that open only by silence. Not locks, nor keys, nor command, but stillness. You've passed such a door now, through the outer gate, and down one step beneath the arch of the first courtyard. Slush crunches at your heel, thin layers of old straw wound against the frozen ground. You walk where horses once stamped and boiled breath in storms, where boys sparred in rings of silt and sharpened their lives on dulled iron. The shadows fall in long sheets. Linen-colored fog gathers in the archways, winding like story thread against the outer walls and vaults. You pass beneath banners that show the dire wolf. Gray, stark, open-mouthed but silent all the same, as if it, too, has nothing more to say, but guards its story still. And then the wind begins again, not strong, but wise. It bends your hood. It carries up the frost-bitten scent of earth, smoke, and something like old parchment left for too long in the mouth of a tomb. It is the smell of memory, what the oldest gods might breathe when they wake. You pause and listen. It is easy to miss the whisper at first, too soft, not voice exactly, but atmosphere waiting to shape itself. There is no source, not yet, but it says something you don't quite hear with ears. It is something like belonging, like song, like goodbye. Walk deeper now, Stone paths split off to kitchens long cooled and closed, to towers caught mid-collapse for generations. Somewhere, a raven coughs. A flag creaks against iron rung. But it is the next path you take, the one that slopes downward between slanted walls like shoulders hunched in sleep, that draws you. And beneath your boots, you find it, fabric, tattered, but still there. Old black fabric scattered in patches over the frost like the remains of a shroud eaten by time. You bend, press fingers to it. The thread is coarse, but tightly spun, woven strong from northern hands. Possibly Night's Watch, more likely older. A ceremonial draping. For what? You cannot guess. You rise again. The light dims here, though no clouds hide the sky. Just something heavier now, ancient and unmeasured. Something has been watching you since you stepped into the gate. Not unfriendly, but watching all the same. And now, pressed against the ivy-draped stone to your left, you see an indent. A carved hollow where something once sat. Not large, the shape of a hand, perhaps. You trace it. Smooth edges. Deliberate pattern. Water dappled over centuries. Some believe the Starks of old left messages for those who still knew how to feel them. Not read. Not hear. Feel. You press your hand into the carved stone. And something shifts. Not sound. Not light. Just breath. Yours. Slowed. Softened. And beneath your feet, the ground hums again. Like a sigh released into night air after holding too much sorrow too long. Turn now, you feel it. The right path has worn steps. Sunken at the center, stirred by many feet, many winters. This was not decoration. It was procession. Real historians, not the kind who write for citadels, but those who listen to ice in the weirwood shadow, believe the original purpose of Winterfell was not war. It was witness, old rites, older oaths, rituals not kept in text, but in blood and fire and sleep. And here, you descend toward those beginnings. A carved archway frames the next shadowed corridor, blackened at the top by old soot. Fires once burned here, despite the southern belief that the north sleeps only in cold. But a northerner knows, fire is memory. Fire is lineage. Fire is what you hold close when even your name might forget you. Here, along one crumbled wall, the remnants of an old inscription flicker in your peripheral gaze. Most of it has vanished into moss. But one Ser Quentin two hands rubbing, transcribed on thin vellum and stored in the alchemist's hall in Old Town, recorded fragments. The wolf waits, not for blood, but for breath given again. At dusk, silence is the vow. And you wonder what vow required silence. Beyond the carved arch, the room opens, swelling with cold like a lung. You stand at the threshold of something unspoken, the kind of place even dreams approach softly. Then it happens. You hear it. A long, slow howl, not near, not far, just there, somewhere behind the dusk. Low, ancient, without echo, a single morning note stretched like fabric across the years. You remember the torn cloak in the snow, the carved handprint in stone. And now, a question that floats like ash toward the ceiling. What is remembered when there are no longer names? Only sound, only breath, only walls that sleep? You do not speak. You do not need to. Not here. The snow falls soft again. None enters the room. Yet still, strangely, there are flakes. Floating slow between beams, thick as feathers, too heavy to fall fast. Your breath clouds and vanishes. Then clouds again. then slows. The wolf is watching, but it does not hunt. It remembers. You are not prey. You are a memory returning home. And outside, a single candle in a high window stirs, its light wavering like ink weeping from old script onto weathered skin. Someone else still wakes, but soon, they too will drift. The snow keeps falling, and the gates to true winter have barely begun to open. The wind softens now, drawing faint lines across your cheek like a painted brush that forgets its color. Beneath your boot, the stone is warmer than before, like a hearth hiding its flame deep below. You notice how time thickens in certain corners, where the frost refuses to cling, where breath doesn't quite escape the body. And beyond the archway behind you, where the courtyard once echoed with hands training hands, the silence now lays flat, folded like linen beneath the snow. There's a narrow path leading left from the chamber's door. You wouldn't have noticed, not at first, the way it bends behind a missing brick, how it dips into shadow like a whispered suggestion. But the air there draws different. Not colder, just older. So you follow it. Every few steps, the stone changes. One slab etched, another worn to bone. A pattern not clear to your eyes, but someone knew it once. A language walked into place, remembered only by heel and toe. Leaves have blown here through some forgotten corridor above, dry, crumbling, and thin as old breath. They're not from the weirwoods, these. These are birch, white bark, thin veins, curling at the edges. You kneel beside one, press it between your fingers. At first it flakes, then something strange, it smudges. Beneath your thumb, a faint curl of darkness. Ink? No, not quite ink. Resin darkened over centuries. Sap sealed with salt, then stained by time. A page once written upon by carving. A name perhaps, some old first mark left during the age before paper, before vellum. When knowing a name meant living under it. You imagine them. The birch trees standing sentinel around Winterfell, long before the current forest, long before men came with fire and stone. These were the trees that gave themselves willingly, allowing bark to be shaved in thin scrolls. A gift, not parchment, not scripture, but memory, peeled and pressed into the hands of the first men. Long ago, it is believed these birch leaves were used not only for writing, but as offerings. In burials, wrapped around bone to keep names from vanishing. You wonder how many have been buried beneath leaves that whisper names no longer spoken. Names you might still inhale right now, drifting up from the cracks underfoot. You keep walking. The hall bends sharply, and suddenly the scent rising around you changes. Damp wood shifts towards smoke. Not fire exactly, but something smoldered. Faint. Charred paper? No, it's older than that. A smell like old candles snuffed too many times. Wax and parchment and breath, thick with something final. You touch the wall. Fingerprints press into soot. Yours and others. Then light. Faint. Flickering from somewhere behind the wall. No window you can see, but the wall itself seems to glow, barely, from one corner. Not gold, not white, but a kind of dull silver, like snow remembered in ink. And along this silver wall, you see something. Marks. Half faded, but deliberate. A sweeping swirl that loops downward into teeth, claws, a tail. No sigil exactly, too wild for that. A beast, or the idea of a beast. And beside it hands. Dozens of them. Carved into the stone like prayers. Child-sized, elder-bent, finger-length and width mapping lines of a people trying. Always, to remember something the snow keeps taking. The first breath, they called it. The notion that Northerners weren't shaped by winters, but by how they first exhaled into it. That very first breath under a gray sky, when heat left the body and silence answered it. That was the making of a Stark.no name. Breathing, alone, was enough. Some scholars in Old Town dismissed this idea, calling it poetry, not history. But ravens from Bear Island still carry birch-bundled birth blessings, thin slips of white bark, folded with a thumbprint and sent south with the name of a new child. Not for health, for memory to S.O. the gods see breath marked as truth. The story returns to you. As you walk deeper, something catches in the dust. A scrap, no bigger than your palm. It blotches black along one edge, curling inward like it tried to protect its center. You kneel again. Lift it. You look up. Leaves, but not falling from above. From inside. The birch trees are shedding upward, drifting into the sky. A reverse snow, bleached and slow, curling leaf breaths rising from the ground and fading into whatever ceiling this grove holds. You follow a single scrap with your eye, white, almost translucent, like pressed vellum catching light from behind without a source. You blink, and before you, someone stands. Not close, not far, not clear, just there. She faces away, her hair braided with curls of bark and salt. Her cloak is ink dark, woven with threading that appears and disappears, fabric that forgets itself and remembers again between blinks. One hand rests against the birch with 3 fingers splayed. Not 5, just 3. The other clutches a blade not drawn from her belt, but bound across her chest, fastened with wax string that looks like sleep tightened into knot. You step closer, but she fades where shadow touches her heel. You do not call out. Her presence is not a question. Beside where it stood, the grove dips inward. Another hollow root well, soaked not with water, but fog. At its center, a small circle of stones, placed by hand, each one bearing a smooth fingerprint in its center, as if pressed once, firmly, by someone with closed eyes. They do not surround a light. There is no lantern here, no candle. The shape they form is light itself, pale gray against darker stone, forming the outline of a moon reflected in still winter lake water. Somewhere above, a raven clicks once, then goes silent again. You reach into your cloak, uncertain of what you were reaching for, only to find a fragment of birch tucked into your sleeve you do not remember taking. It bears no writing, just the smell of sap and something distant, like old beeswax and long-dried ink. You place it gently among the moonstones. The moment it leaves your hand, one of the stones warms. Only slightly. You do not touch it. You do not need to. There is a rhythm awakening under your feet. Not drums, too crude for this place. Not heartbeat, too personal. Something slower, more patient. Like a lullaby hummed behind stone by someone who longs to forget what once brought them here. To your left, a wooden low bench. Uncarved, untouched by fire. A piece of tree bent soft into place by age and ritual. You sit, and your breath joins the hush again. Here, memories don't speak. They wait. People ask why Northerners are the way they are. Some say it's the winters. Others, the graves. But those who have spent nights, not hours, within the Godswood groves know better. It is listening. Quiet practiced long enough that reflection becomes essence, and past becomes presence. And the North remembers. You remember the carved hands on the wall, the child-sized shapes echoing the same circle you just placed a leaf into. You remember the name on the bark scrap, Nymphala, who vanished like meltwater after naming snow. You remember the winged wolf, the contract sealed in salt print, the fireless light, and now, back in this silent, leaf-shedding grove encircled by memory, you realize something. These aren't memories of names. They're memories of being named. You close your eyes. The mist drifts lower again, as if settling to keep you company. Cold, but not cruel. Just ancient. Just waiting. A creek far off, in the walls known only to wolves and maesterless corridors. A breeze moves that does not stir the leaves. They continue to rise upward, undisturbed. The grove pulls itself inward. Not shrinking, just getting quieter. A kind of sleep falling over sleep, like heavy cloth layered over a still body for warmth. You feel your own weight different now, as if the bench is cradling more than you, cradling history, cradling breath, soft as salt air, being drawn back into the trees again. Somewhere beyond the weave of trunks, you hear again the hum you felt by the staircase stone. Whisper music of roots. Not melody, not song, just presence. Unyielding, unrecorded, unforgotten. And as you rise, cloak brushing against the curling birch leaves on the ground, you feel the first touch of awareness within you, like ink on dry skin, the knowing that you are being written into the lore of the North, not as a name, but as a breath taken where names were once born. You move quietly back through the twined trees, footsteps fading with each branch. Not from weight, from welcome. And before this place closes again, you turn and whisper something aloud, words you do not know. But the fog seems to understand. The grove exhales with you, and the wind, for the first time in hours, is gone. But the North remembers. You return the way you came, though the paths have changed behind you. Softly, subtly, like snow refolding upon old footprints. Nothing here moves with haste. Even the wind dares not follow you now, reluctant to disturb the silence the birch grove wrapped around your breath. But the walls return, and with them, stone. Not new stone, nor the sturdy blocks of a southern castle. Here, it is older, dust-flecked, and pocked with centuries of size. Above you, arching ceilings draw into slow, slanted vaults, chiseled with no symmetry, but a kind of raw intention. These halls were not built for beauty. They were shaped for remembrance. Your palm brushes the wall as you move. Cool lichen clings to the mortar, and beneath your fingertips the moss feels like fabric, soft, absorbing. You wonder how many hands have touched these same stones before you, hands both living and no longer. How many pressed against this surface not to guide, but simply to prove they were here. You cross what must once have been a cloister, thin windows cut like slits for sun that no longer finds its way here. And at the end, where corridors divide again, there's a passage shadowed in violet light. A torch? No, there are no flames here. But something shines in color anyway, faint as dusk's echo. A glimmer of something remembered, bouncing off the dust in the air. You follow. The air changes again as the chamber opens. It is shaped like a funnel, downturned, a cathedral of quiet folding into itself. Above, the curved roof weeps slow drops of condensation from time-etched stone ribs. Each drop falls with the precision of a ticking clock, though no timepiece would dare mark this moment. And on the far end, surrounded by the remains of scaffolding once used by stone carvers now long dead, stands the figure. Not person, a statue, towering, silent, eyes cast down. Bran the Builder, but not the Bran of warm tales told to children in furs, where he rides giants and stacks stones with laughter. This carving wears no crown, no sword, His hands are empty, palms out, as if pressing against a wall no one else can see. His face is unreadable, soft at the mouth, almost sorrowful at the brow. His eyes closed. And here in this place where no warmth dares gather, you feel something curl again in your chest. That same hush you held in the grove, but heavier now, as if this chamber carries the weight of something unfinished. Approach him. Get close. The stone that shapes his arm is smoother than that of the walls. Not newly cut, worn, touched many times by many hands. You lift your own, matching the shape of his, and place it lightly against the curve of granite palm. You feel nothing. And then, there it is again. Quiet. Just there, beneath hearing. Etched into the stillness itself, a slow, deep rhythm, like earth murmuring to itself in its sleep. And then the voice. It is your own imagination, perhaps, but the words still come from some corner in dust. He saw it, not what to build, but why. In the histories, Bran is called a mason, a kingmaker, a dreamer. But a few frost-born stories kept in cracked cups and snow-veined carvings tell of something else. That he did not build anything at all, not with hands. He was the one who wandered into mountain caves so deep they had no roots, and touched stone inside them that still heard the language of the sky. There, in nearly complete dark, Bran closed his eyes and saw the wall asleep beneath the surface of the world. Not as defense, not as a shield, but as vow. He returned changed, speechless for one moon cycle and one day. After that, builders came to him, not by ask, by pull. And so the wall began. No plans, no grammar, just presence. A story stored not in books, but inside him. Somewhere within the folds of your robe now, dry parchment rustles. You hadn't placed it there, but as your fingers search, they find a note, barely larger than your hand. Folded 8 times. You open it. A sketch. Rough lines of stone tiers. A curving silhouette marked with 3 figures, one kneeling, one pointing, and one holding a round object above a frozen hill. No symbols, no words, only a faint tracing along the side, a curl of ink that bleeds into the margin, shaped like a direwolf sigh. It's the kind of sketch made not in the pursuit of history, but of remembering, a dream put to page before waking. And here, in this great and solemn chamber, you understand what so few ever do. That Bran did not make legends. He stored them in soil, in frost, in walls, in rumor. All he did was listen. The sound returns. Not hum now, but faint tap. Stone against stone, like some ancient pulse waking within the ribcage of the land. And just behind Bran's likeness, covered thick with time-blown soot and crumbled weave, a tapestry. You lift it back and find a hidden hearth. Unused, cold, but there's something left behind in the ash. A circle of melted wax, still faintly aromatic, laced with pine resin and some northern silent thing, like hollow ice. Ritual wax, reserved for solemn oaths made before foundations. And near it, a ring, coiled iron wire, shaped like a wolf biting its own tail. You do not touch it, but you lower your head, a telling held within the silence. Breath moves again through cracked mortar, and above Bran's closed eyes, a single word begins to trace itself across the vaulted stone. Vigil. Whether it is truly there, or only cast by your mind's need to complete the shape, you do not know. But within you now, the story folds deeper. And as you step back into the corridor, past the soot tapestry, past the stone hands emptied by time, you feel once more the warmth of the grove behind you. Pale bark, Ghost leaves. You remember them. And for a moment, Bran remains in your mind not as figure carved from rock, but as someone who saw silence as a kind of scripture, a way of building the world from within. You place your palm again against the corridor wall. A pause. Yes, just there. It breathes. And so do you. The hallway narrows behind you, pulled inward as if bound by threads spun from the stone itself. A corridor not made to guide you, but to make you smaller, quieter, until your thoughts, too, begin to lower their voice. There is no shadow here because there is no light, and still, everything gleams. You have become used to the dark, not as absence, but as company. The kind of darkness that watches softly, that remembers. You reach another door, not marked, not locked, not even shaped like a door, unless one knows where to place their hand. You do, and as your touch settles against the grain, you feel wool, not wood. Fabric, thick and damp with cold, nailed into the frame as though trying to keep something in. You press against it, and it yields. Only slightly. The door opens into black wind. Not just cold now, not just lonely. Vast. You stand at the threshold of the lower bedrock hall, though that name has never appeared in any scroll curated by maesters. You are beneath Winterfell, far below even the crypts. This place does not appear on castle blueprints. Its shape forms out of necessity, like breath beneath grief. Your steps echo. A long descent, carved not in symmetry, but in slope. Rocky earth, flattened by time and touch, winds down into what could have once been a quarry, or something older, half-finished. But the air moves slow here. Not from draft. There is no wind down here. It is breathless, except every now and then it stirs, as if the very earth beneath your boots shifts just enough to remind you it is not empty, but dreaming. And far ahead now, shapes emerge. Not walls, not doorways, bones, bleached white and sealed in crystal frost, not quite ice, line the curve of this vast underground room. Shoulders like towers, ribs like vaulted ceilings, skulls pressed gently into corners, untouched by time as though carefully arranged centuries ago and left half reverent, half fearful. The giants. You knew them from story, from myth, from banked fireside lullabies that left you both thrilled and sad, where the giants roamed freely into death and dusk, mourning the old world as they went. But here, above these same bones, dripping gently from long calcified stalactites, is water. And what the water leaves behind is clearer than ice and older than snow. Salt. Salt, crusted in tiny curling trails across ribs and hip bones. Salt across hair-thin cracks in fossilized marrow. Even salt pouring in fine dust down upon what looks like a jaw, still half open. The north is known for snow, but the earth remembers salt. And salt is sorrow. There are those who believe the giants died in battle, hewn by men, brought low by war. But others remember a snow too thick for sound, that fell for 5 days without ceasing and buried not just the living, but the last gentle things the world ever made. It is whispered those 5 days birthed the myth of the long night, not because it began the cold, but because it proved even giants could freeze where they stood. A scroll, now lost, written in the earliest tongues of the Sister Isles, claimed the first Stark built not just walls, but rooms of silence, where what was lost could be stored without shame. You wonder now if this is one of those rooms. A flickering torch, carried not by you, moves in the distance. You pause, not in fear, in quiet, and the flame disappears. Its light leaves behind shimmer, Layers of quartz line the walls here, cracked and veined like ink on glass. You follow them with your fingers. Texture becomes story again, a new kind of text. Symbols flattened by age. A four-pronged mark, shaped like a wolf's paw pressed into salt. Once. Then again. And between them, a sigil you know. But changed. The direwolf, yes. But its mouth is closed. Its eyes are rounder. Weaker. Its tail splits, feathering slightly at the end like wings. No longer the familiar beast of the banner. This is a direwolf told to forget its fangs. A ghost ancestor, maybe. Or a kindlier face carved when the cold was not yet a threat. Below the carving, a basin, filled not with rainwater, with sand, and something stirs in it when you breathe. One breath, its surface draws into a spiral. Another breath, the spiral deepens, until it hums, not from within, but around. This room is not mourning. It is listening. Some say giants didn't die at all, only fell asleep so deeply that even the gods forgot how to wake them. One such story passed down in Umber blood speaks of a time at the end of the first frost, when the salt thawed and the bones sang. Not aloud, but in vibration, a sound only the trees could repeat properly. You sit. There is a place in the stone that clearly expects your weight, shaped not for body or throne, but pause. You take it. The salt sheen glistens. The bones lean gently against their own memory. And from somewhere beyond, a low, low rumble. Not thunder, not wind. A breath. Your own? Or its. There's parchment tucked beside your knee, furled and fastened with wax hardened so long ago it's cracked like old bark. You uncoil it with care. No words. Only a drawing scratched in soot. 3 figures, as before. But now, the third has fallen. The kneeling one is rising. And the last? The one from before, shown holding something above a hill, now stretches an arm toward the sleeping bones of a giant. In its hand, not a weapon, not fire, but leaf. Reaching with leaf, not sword. Bran never built with stone alone. You hear that again. You hear it. The hum inside the basin. The salt-veined walls. The stone pressed smooth from presence. You remember the grove. The twin trees. The breath the door exhaled when touched. You are inside memory now, not observation. And the bones. They listen. They do not judge. They do not rise. They remain, suspended in breathing salt. And somewhere beneath, tangled far from light, you swear you hear the tree roots moving, like threads twisting a forgotten name back into sound. When you rise, the salt on your boots whispers softly against the stone. No sound, only recognition. The statue of Bran held no crown. The basin offered no flame. The wolf bore wings long since clipped. And the giant, silent, and yet still, you feel protected. No banners here, no titles, only the truth, that the North was never built to impress, only to endure. Ever softly, ever breathing, ever remembering. You return upward, though calling it ascent doesn't feel true. It's not the climb that defines the way, it's the hush. The farther you rise, the stiller the sounds become, like breath drawn inside a deep veil. Here the air smells less of stone now and more of quiet air-traveled paths known only to the dead. The salt is behind you, though it still clings faintly to your skin, sifting from your hair like fine winter dust. But now it has become something else. Motif turned memory, memory turned ritual. You turn a rounded passage, and the sound greets you again. Not music, not voice. Something between water and wind, low and ceaseless. A harmony etched into the bones of Winterfell long before books remembered how to mourn. You feel it now beneath your boots. A pulse, not yours. It comes from underfoot, from within the stone, behind the curves of buried arches and the long, arched beams you cannot see, only feel, as they cradle everything above your head like the ribs of sleeping beasts. The lower halls spiral forward into Heartwood, into Oldest Place. And here, you cross under a vault with soft grooves, so worn they no longer read like carving, but like inheritance. Not made, they were always here. Light appears ahead, just a shimmer, nothing flickering. A pale blush like light glanced off ice. And there, the gates of the crypt. Not the ones you know above. These are older by decades, or centuries, or perhaps they were placed here before kings had faces or names. The wood is dark, colder than it should be, as if it holds its breath from the inside. Polished by hand, sealed with wax now barely visible beneath the flake of time. Near the bottom, the faintest outline of a dire wolf burned into the grain not by fire, but by pressure. You touch it without intention, and it opens. It doesn't creak, doesn't groan. The gate simply steps aside, like fog around memory, and you are drawn within. This isn't a hallway. Not quite. This is the chamber where the northern voices sleep. Step softly. Here, even silence prays. Walls laced in sediment lean in, drawn closer by cold dark weight. You pass 5 archways before the sound changes again. And then, stone beneath feet becomes something else. Different sound now beneath your boots. Not sharp tap, nor hush thud. It's deeper, hollow almost. You stop, kneel, and there it is. A grate, circular, carved with flourishes and dead tongues. Barely visible unless the air is still. Now it is. You touch it, and feel warmth. Not heat, warmth. Music, without tone. They say the old crypts breathe, but not all the time. Only when something new is about to be buried, when something must be folded in. You stand, and walk between the statues. Nothing announced you. No names call out. But still, their presence draws new gravity to your chest. You pass him first, a figure set in stone, kneeling with head bowed, sword across knees. No name beneath. No place on any known chart or scroll. But his face has been traced so many times by moss and softness that the eyelids seem closed, swollen in reverent sleep. A soft pillow of green grows beneath the statue's feet. Then another. Woman, no helm, her eyes half open, her lips parted in something just before breath. A small locket, carved to suggest it once hung around the sculpted neck, slightly broken now, as if the likeness tried to turn from sight. They all face inward. But there is no center. There is no hearth here. No brazier. Just presence. And wind, again, but not air. The sound of ice singing lightly against itself. Long, low, delicate as glass. You're deep enough now that history doesn't echo. It settles. A kind of sleep beneath sleep. You pass a low table, no chairs. Upon it, wool, folded, cream-colored in half-light. Each piece edged with gray knotted lace. A ring sewn on the topmost cloth, tied into pattern. The north has no crowns beneath the ground. Only cloaks. Only folds. Only fabric cut wide enough to cover both body and vow. A whisper behind you. No sound, not truly. Just the suggestion that something brushed something. Bark on bark, cloth on bark. The passing of time through fabric. You look back, and something has changed. One of the statues is turned slightly. Not much, just the angle of its shadow. You do not panic. You step toward it, carefully, as though approaching a sleeping animal you once knew as a friend. The closer you come, the colder the air. And you see it now, not turned. Breathe on. Frost graces the side of the statue's stone cheek, wetting the gray like a tear that refused to fall. You look again to the ceiling. No cracks, no drops, just breath. You hold yours, and the world seems to stop holding, too. Some say the statues in Winterfell's crypts were carved with secret pockets in their chests, hollows filled with bookless words, heart vaults sealed. Ritual. They were never meant to be opened, only to grow heavy as the soul's weight settled inward. Even now, seated in moss and gray, the walls don't feel full. They feel hungry, but not to devour, to carry. The singing of the ice stone begins again. A new tone this time, lower, more rounded, like water in a sealed jar responding to distant thunder across a frozen lake. And then, far off, so far you almost believe it to be dream. Knocking, twice, slow, from beneath. The grate. You do not move to answer. You do not fear it. It's not for now, but it is there. So you lower your hand again to the fabric on the table. And there, between folded wool and bone-sewn ring, you find a page, parchment thinner than sleep, marked on only one side. It reads, "Forge in silence. Sleep when named. Breathe only when sung." Nothing more. You fold it, place it near your chest, and keep walking. With each step, the names of the statues seem to return, not carved, not spoken, but felt. Recognition rising like cracked frost on old glass. You feel the passage loop again. Gently, it does not end. It folds, and rising above your breath, you hear it at last. The low singing of ice along the foundations, where no one sings, and yet everything echoes. Memory here is not kept. It is built, layer on layer, stone on sorrow, breath upon breath. And somewhere deep in the dark, as you rise slowly from the ancient throat carved beneath Winterfell, you feel it for the first time since entering. Warmth from below, like fire never lit, but waiting, not to cleanse, but to honor, to remember, to keep. The warmth meets you quietly, not all at once, but like a memory rediscovered in layers. It begins behind the knees as you ascend from the hush of foundations, where frost once shaped the whispers of stone into breathing song. Now that breath turns back toward you, pulled upward, snaking like a soft ribbon of embers curled close and careful. There is no fire in sight, but you feel it. Somewhere above, a room holds flame. Not crackling, not bold. This is not the crowned fire of forge or feast. It is a smaller flame, folded into its own purpose. A watch flame, the kind that burns slow because it owes something to time. Something sacred. You follow the warmth, up through a narrow stairwell carved into the outer edge of the west wing, where the walls lean not because of age, but because they were built to bow gently inward, two hands closing slightly, as if offering some invisible truth to the cold. Few ever come here anymore. This stairwell leads nowhere in particular. No throne room, no war table. But you recognize it, deeply, as if some older part of your step has walked it before. Your boots shift against the dust. The stone melts from hard cut to soft curve. And then a scent. Smoke. But not just smoke. Ash-fingered, yes, but wrapped in something wilder. It smells like a grove on fire. Not destruction, but transformation. Like offering. The wind curls oddly in this passage, as if spiraling in through the very stones themselves. The sound is not in your ears anymore, but in the ribs. It's no longer the bones of giants or the weight of silence. This sound is different, lean, insistent, not loud but sharp in purpose. It is the crackleless whisper of fire recollected. You emerge. A chamber. Round. Windowless. The only light in the room flows from a large iron brazier suspended by rusted chains in the center, its massive frame wrapped with what appears to be black cloth, caught in hardened folds of wax. The fire resting within it is dull, not flame exactly, but a reddish glow, like coal half buried in a prayer circle of ash. The room trembles, but gently, like something held in breath. You take one step in, and already your skin remembers it. Ash in the air. Smoke wound through the edges of vision. This place is not hot, but open. So open that heat merely waits in corners rather than ruling them. Here, the sigil of House Stark was born, but not stitched, not drawn, not chosen, dreamed. A dream so quiet it could not be spoken in anything louder than flame. For centuries, small folk believed that the Stark dire wolf emerged from story blood, found in the snow, tamed in the frost, worn into armor. But here, now, you see how untrue that was. The sigil was given, not by war, by fire. On the wall, barely etched, beneath veils of soot and candle-wound shadow, you see it. The first wolf. And it is not like the one stitched on cloaks or spun into banners. There is no border around it. No teeth. No snarl. No ground beneath it. The wolf is running upward. Its paws lose form the farther they rise, curling softly into arc. Not skyward, fireward. Its tail burns into a curl of smoke. Somewhere in your memory, ember calls to ember. The earlier leaf, the winged sigil, the bone basin beneath the song of salt. All of it now echoes here. It makes sense. Fire remembers what frost tries to forget. There is a long oak table along the left wall, and its surface is worn not by feast, but by elbows. Leaned into. Heavy with thought. Its middle curves downward slightly, like a spine bowed too long beneath its own lineage. On it, 7 candle stubs. Only 2 are burning. Each flame is pale, lit more from the wick's memory than from wax. Their light casts double shadows, thin, wiry shapes drawn across the ceiling in curves too curved to stay still. Your hand passes near the second flame, and something flickers. The wall behind it ripples in heat's shimmer, and beneath it, words begin to show. Only barely. Old high tongue. You wait. Let the smoke unfurl into thought. They say one Stark ancestor passed through here every year, at the end of autumn, to leave a word unsaid. A truth distilled not by ink, but by smoke itself, captured and pressed into the wall with the dying breath of fire as the flame dimmed. You hold your own breath again, and now read it. A Shane, a word with no proper translation, but it lives in breath as to follow light not with sight, but with knowing. Each candle remains for those who have dreamed the wolf of flame. And here, in smoke, you know one more truth. The wolf was not chosen because it was fierce. The wolf was chosen because it was willing to burn. Ash curls around your feet on the ground. It moves. Each soft drift of ash cracks something beneath your ear, not sound, but echo. You look down, and beneath the brazier's chains you see the floor has grooved hundreds of soft loop marks. Paw prints, circling, again and again, in rings, the width of the chamber. A beast that walked this room, but never clawed it, burned into it, left prints like prayer. You take one step inside the print, and stop. Your heartbeat stutters, only slightly, as though your body was not placed wrong, but too right. And then you hear it. Snap. A curl of embers splits in the brazier above, and one of the candle wicks goes out. Darkness stirs, and in it, something forgiveness-colored sinks gently over the center of your vision, a wash of nothing, the kind that covers without erasing. In that moment of dimming, a story flashes in the dark. A single Stark, walking through storm, cloak wet, hair weighted with frost, holding nothing but a torch whose wick had long lost fire, yet flame curled above it still. He walked without fear. The wolf walked behind him, but not beside him, not guard, not muse, just witness. They say his name is lost. Others say it was never written down. But in this room, in this specific room, he placed down the torch, closed his eyes, and vanished. Here, the sigil of House Stark became what it would always mean. Not might, not power, but memory flamed deep enough to resist even forgetting. Ashdoth, breath that would one day need to be reclaimed by blood. The fire returns now to fuller glow, and you see, once more, the looping burn marks across the floor, and the first sigil dancing just briefly upon the wall, as though it might lift fully from soot once memory itself grows warm enough. You bow your head to it, not in homage, but in silence. Upward, there will be wind again. But you know, now, that beneath that wind, even the cold breathes fire. When given enough time to sleep, the wind returns gradually. You feel at first not on your skin, but behind your teeth, the scent of older air, stirred through cavern mouth and tower gut, curling beneath doors never truly closed. It slips around you now like a scarf made of breath, woven without haste. It carries up from the stairwell behind the brazier room, a slow exhale from fire into frost. You follow it. Your boots are ash-marked. Your mind, too. Soft trails of gray still cling to the folds of your robes, and in the shallow hem of your coat the smallest ember rests, neither hot nor cold, but waiting. Not for flame, for recall. Some carry blades as heirlooms. Here, in the north, even ash wakes with memory. The corridor arcs ahead and narrows, then opens again without form, blooming around you in the way fog does when it finds wide places. You are stepping not into a room, but into absence. A hollowed-out section of Winterfell few speak of, fewer still enter. The Ink Hall, so called, not for scrolls or parchment, but for what remains. On the walls are names that flicker, half-written, old carvings left to melt back into the stone, as if words were once burned into this place, and then forgotten by the very stone that carried them. You step slowly. Each footfall draws shadows upright from the walls as you pass, tall and elongated, like watchers too tired to lift their eyes. There, on the right, one name stands vivid, cut not with knife, but time. He and our Stark. No tales remember him. No battle bears his wound. No wife, no child. And yet beneath his name, a symbol, not wolf, not flame, a tree, not the weirwood, not birch, slender, strange, its roots twisting in a circle, its branches bearing no leaves. Only marks that look like language, or possibly claw. You continue walking. The walls curve again, folding lightly inward, and here the ink grows darker, not from age, but from something older than ink itself. These are not written names. These are pressed. You draw a finger across one, still soft, not wet, but tender, as if the wall remembers the hand that pressed it. And ahead, the air smells different. Familiar. Oil. Not fresh, but aged. The tang of rendered flaxseed, blended with lampblack and ash. The kind of ink that stains deeply but fades subtly. The ink of Heaven writing, rarely used outside of the island gravings of far north clans east of the Skagos Straits. And yet it is here, stored in a heavy clay jar resting in a simple niche just above shoulder height. You lift it gently. Cold. You turn it upside down. No cork, no seal, only silence. The ink within does not pour. It breathes, coaxes, and as you hold it, the wall near you begins to hum with echo. Soft illumination blooms from nothing, and you see lines. Hundreds, thousands, thin as dust, carved in rings. Concentric stories bound around a center you cannot yet see. You turn slowly. Find the center. There, on the floor, beneath a shallow pool of undisturbed water, rests a single page. No scroll, no binding, no writer's mark of claim. Just a page. You do not remove it, only kneel beside it. There are no words upon it, but shapes begin to appear as you breathe. The room reacts. The ink in your hand warms, and, reflected in the water, the ghost of a shape, a branch, or vein, or map, or root. It curves, splits, twists, forms a circle again. You hear something then, a voice. No, a name, but not spoken, written, without ink, without breath, only vibration. The North does not use words the way the South does. Here, names are given by what is felt beneath the word, the intention beneath the sound. You stretch your hand outward, and the page below the water ripples without moving. The shape completes, and you understand. There was once a name, carved not in language, not in fight, but in presence. A name handed down not through lineage, but through quiet. And in that quiet, the Starks rose. Not by decree, by being known. You return now to the walls. All around, names no longer born. Vaura, Gren, Olitha, Tormid, Errol Stark, each with a symbol after the name. A circle, a wave, a foam, a cloak, and each is paired, faintly, with a trail, a marking leading outward, like thread pulled too far. These are the forgotten branches, the leaves, not erased, simply unclaimed, because claiming isn't needed here. You remember now the bark you saw near the grove, the ink-stained birch, the quiet circle of stones, the flicker of the bannerless wolf rising through fire. All were parts of this. You kneel again. The jar remains beneath your hands, and in a gentle moment of certainty, you touch the ink. Only a little, just the smallest trace. Press it to the stone before you. The mark is not your own. It belongs here, and the mark disappears as quickly as it arrived. But you feel its weight, settling inside you like warmth after long cold. From an unseen alcove, fabric stirs. You do not look yet. You already know what waits there. Cloaks, dozens, dust-laden, threadbare, not ceremonial, worn, unsung, unwritten. The cloaks of those whose names were never called aloud in hall, but whose breath remains folded into the mortar and ash of the North itself. You brush your hand along one, and the wall behind it seems to pulse once, as though it had missed your hand. You remain still, and the pressure passes. When you leave, the jar of ink remains behind, as it was always meant to be. Nothing here demands memory. It offers it, and as the air draws cold again with the forming of a wind deeper in the halls, you rise, both emptied and somehow carved, as though your own name might one day ripple just out of sight in this wall, felt only in silence, and remembered in breath. The air drifting now through the narrowing corridors carries the scent not of ash, or ink, or bone, but of something older than all three. You almost do not notice it at first. It is too familiar, too buried beneath the breath. But then it arrives fully, a sweetness twisted with sorrow, leaves faded to rust, flesh turned to sap, the red leaves. They are near, the columns thin, and the light is different here, not brighter, but heavier. Diffuse as fog drawn through blood-colored silk, it lays itself gently upon your shoulders and bones, as though it too wishes only to kneel beside what waits. A wall bows open into a space neither round nor square, a shape forgotten by architects. Stillness lies in the joints, but a kind of expectancy pulses through the floor beneath your boots. It tingles through the worn leather, brushing your ankles like thread. You are not alone here, but not in danger either. This place is awake. You stand at the edge of the oldest grove within Winterfell. But this is not the godswood known to most. This is the first godswood, hidden, walled in stone, and named in nothing but wind. Here, the pact was never broken, because it was never spoken. And the trees, remember, 6 grow in a wide semicircle across the far wall. Each bears red leaves edged by white veins, curling inward like fingers bent in rest. Their roots braid together below the loam, bumping up beneath the mossy carpet like scripture beneath skin, an old language no longer recitable, but still present in pulse. At the center stands the weirwood. Its bark glows bone white even in this buried place. It seems too vivid for this world, as though some dream bled through stone and rooted itself in the dark. Blood-red leaves drift slowly from its branches, though there is no current, no sky, no wind. And behind it stone, walls smoothed by time, but still holding faint reliefs. Not carvings exactly, tracings of faces, not one, dozens, set just deep enough to catch the eye at the right angle, just soft enough to fade again when unlooked for. Old gods never had names, only attention. Here, in the hush-lit curve of the old grove's echo, you feel their patience. You realize you have stepped into a place where time is not permitted. So you kneel, slowly, with care. The earth here is not soil, not in the southern sense. It is made of woven roots, powdered bark, layered moss, and something finer. Dust of breath, ash of silence. You place your hands on the ground and feel it press back, not forcefully, but knowingly, as if this place doesn't ask for prayer, only presence. The red leaves shift. One, then another. 2 spiral downward soundlessly through the air, landing near your knee. They land pointing due north. Your eyes follow, and there, a small altar of stone, no taller than your thigh. Rough-hewn, not decorated. Across its face, shallow scratches. Vows. Names. Patterns too old to understand. You approach. The top of the altar is flat, but worn in the center. Something once rested here for a long, long time. A blade? A book? A bowl? No one knows. But whatever it was, it carried an object of offering. You reach into your coat and pull something unbidden. The token from before. The birch bark you once found in the chambers below. Unmarked then, it now seems darker in the hand, as though flame passed near it and remembered its surface. You lay it on the altar. It doesn't move, but the trees do. A soft rustle, not wind. A breathing sound made by many leaves trembling, but not shaking. They vibrate, respond, and that's when you feel you are being watched, not by presence alone, by gaze, not threat, witness. The eyes of the weirwood are closed. But you know, if opened, they would not look at you. They would look through. They always have. Long before the first men cut down the groves. Long before kings and crowns. The Pact. You've heard its name in hushed stories. Southern tongues call it a myth, a children's tale. Old gods meeting men of bark and bronze in secret woods to bend the branches of peace around newly spoken law. But that was a summary. A veil. The truth breathes deeper than words. There was no single pact made. There were many. Each grove, its own witness. Each winter, its own ritual. Some say it wasn't the gods that made the pact, nor the men that kept it, but the land itself, yearning for continuity, for silence shared. And in this grove, pact was never spoken aloud. It existed simply as knowing. Two shapes under tree, not fighting, not explaining, just being. A story kept not in record, but in repetition. This is the place the North remembers in its bones, even if it forgets the names of its kings. You kneel longer. The ground remains warm beneath you. And in the hush as you bow your head again, you recall the red leaf that fell in the upper hall, the salt-laced room where bone hummed alongside vow, the winged dire wolf scorched into soot, the scripts spoken only in breath. They are all strands now, tied together gently around the stillness here. A red leaf brushes your cheek. You open your eyes. The weirwood remains unchanged. But beneath it now, the shadows are deeper. Deeper than possible. Like a doorway beneath the root system of the world. No entry. Only gaze. Only listening. For those who sleep. Those who remember. And those who remember to sleep. You do not enter. There is no permission. Only invitation. Only if. But it is not now. Instead, you rise again. And the stone beneath you warms slightly, as if to say, yes, that is enough. You pass once more around the altar and return toward the curved path that brought you here. The smell of leaves and bark surrounding you like a low chant. The pact is not in words. It is a place. It is this place. The old gods breathe here, not in miracle, not in judgment, but in presence. And when you walk back into the stone-dark hallway, beyond the reach of their knowing, the air cools. Your boots make no sound. You are carried by trust, by root, and by silence. Beneath your breath, something stirs, not in the lung, nor in the chest, but lower, deeper, behind the ribs where silence starts to echo. It turns gently, as if waking with you. You're not certain if your feet move or if the stone passage moves for you. There is no direction here, only return. And still, beneath everything you've touched, ink, ash, fabric, fog, this place leads you gently downward, not in descent, but in reverence. The corridor grows narrow once more, but you welcome it now. These walls have begun to feel like pages, and your breath the ink being pressed into forgotten lines. No need to write. The air here records by presence alone. Then, something new. Light. From below. Not candlelight, reflected light. As if a single distant flame shimmered from a surface hidden below sight. Bent forward and warmed by long memory. You follow easily now. There is no need to doubt or wonder. Each turn is memory folding itself into form. The steps change texture. First stone, then wood, then something quieter underneath the soles of your boots. Fabric again. A rug, woven in long lines of gray and red. Threads so aged the pattern is nearly gone. Yet one symbol remains visible beneath your feet, a single hourglass. Empty, And then, you arrive. This is not a crypt. It is not a hall. It is sleep, manifested into stone and ink and solemn air. The ground levels beneath a vaulted ceiling traced with delicate whitewash, faded so badly that in places it resembles fog trapped in plaster. Gravity is softer here. You feel it in your shoulders, in your voice, which no longer wishes to rise. Something in the throat softens. You try to swallow, and realize you're already weeping, not from sadness, from presence. You have entered the room beneath the crypt, buried still beneath names. This place has no record in the Maester's ledgers, but it was built before even the first statue stood guard above. They call it lore, what little escapes this chamber. You stand where dreams are kept, and around you, 7 alcoves, each bearing a stone bed, built low. No statues, no names, no swords forged and lain, only figures, bodies that are not quite bodies. You realize quickly these are not sleeping people. They are tapestries, cloths laid in the shape of rest, padded, sewn, hooded in folds that compress where a head might lay, bent slightly where hands might coalesce in prayer. Each bears the banner color of no known house, stone gray, pinpricked with dust. But woven into the hem of each resting figure is a single thread of polished amber, the only light within the weave. You move to the closest one. Its breathless stillness echoes your own. A slight draft crosses the floor from above, as if the crypts above still need air. You kneel beside the cloth body. No movement, no sound. But beneath the hood line cut into the linen stitches is something you almost see. A darkness that wavers slightly. Not unnatural, only forgotten. From the folds emerges a scent you haven't met in any other room. Wax. Old wax. Not from candle. Ceiling wax. You bow your head. This is not a grave. This is holding. The room does not dream of endings. It dreams of promises left unfinished. They say, among the wandering hill folk north of the last river, that the old houses slept their future into figures, that they carved not statues, but effigies made of cloth and ash, prepared to receive the return of names stolen by war or wind or snow. Here, you find 7, and a table at their center. Upon this table, a blade, wrapped in fabric, dark red, streaked with old salt, embroidered full circle with the old hourglass. You touch the handle through the cloth. Underneath, you feel it. Cold, not deadly, quiet, used, as though it performed an act once and has been waiting for justification ever since. And next to it, a scroll, barely tied, wax seal crumbled, dusted in flakes. You unwrap it slowly. Only one sentence. And the ink is not black. It is gray, crusted with slivered silver. Underscore, to sleep with sword unheld is not surrender. Underscore, until the dream bends open. No names. No expectations. You replace the cloth, not because you're told, but because you understand. This place is not for honor, not for glory. It is the space between breath, between frost and flame, where oaths go not to die, but to wait. Wait for the return. You peer again toward the cloth bodies. One of them, the third, has shifted, only a little. Its hood rests differently, the hem lifted slightly. You lean closer and find the floor beside this resting shape has thinned, bare, as though a knee had pressed it not long ago. Then you notice amber thread unspooling slightly along the bottom. Frayed, interrupted. You reach for it gently, brushing it between the pad of your fingers. Warm, impossible, no flame, no sun, and yet warm. Your chest tightens, not with fear, but with recognition. You've not seen this thread before, because you were never meant to see it. Until now, you follow it with your eyes. It trails off, not downward, not back, but toward the exit, like it's presenting a path, or, perhaps, inviting you to carry something forward. A memory, a shadow, a vow. You pass your fingers once more over the stone table's edge, and as you rise, your own shadow splits softly underfoot. Two forms, not in fright, but as though, for a moment, something walked beside you, then faded again into sleep. You take one backward glance at the resting shapes, folded in cloth, amber thread glinting like slivered dusk. None will explain this place, and none should try, because what sleeps here is not finished, only resting, beneath natural stone, beneath named bones, beneath stories, beneath memory itself. You step out. The linen beneath your boot hums once, very softly, and ceases. You carry nothing with you, but something in you remains open now. A chamber, a room, a silence. Each step forward feels like it echoes with what is still dreaming beneath Winterfell, waiting and waiting to wake. The wind above you sighs again, pulling softly through higher stone. You walk toward it as though through thick fabric parted at the hem, slow and low, the arches around you narrowing until even your breath must bow. As you rise from the resting place of cloth and silence and amber thread vows, you feel the temperature shift, not colder, not warmer, just more awake. The stone begins to re-echo faintly. The hush of chambered dreams is replaced by the low rhythm of somewhere still lived in. Somewhere memory weaves not only downward, but outward. The hall ahead breathes more deeply, drawing your focus through a corridor lined not with statues this time, but with nooks. Tiny alcoves, each carved with enough depth to hold a single object. Most of them are empty. Others hold remnants. A folded ribbon, an unlaced glove, a broken brooch, a withered scrap of fur braided to itself, perhaps a child's forgotten token. These are not heirlooms, not relics, not the sort of symbols kept in archives or sung into glory by hall minstrels. These are remembered things, belongings chosen not for worth, but for weight. You pass each one slowly, feeling them glance against your inner quiet like wind testing loose parchment. Some feel warm to the eye, others feel heavy. And then, one alcove breaks the pattern. Instead of a token, fabric, a cloak, unfolded, hung gently on 3 simple iron nails. It bears the stitching of no house, colors neither bold nor dyed, just pale gray, trimmed with old wolf fur, softened into almost nothing, paper thin along the edges that it breathes with the faintest bob, as if it too had just taken a small inhale upon your passing. You put your hand to the fabric and feel it stir like memory. Inside the lining, names, dozens of them, stitched in loose, impermanent thread barely visible. Stark, and not stark. Half names. Names tied with hyphens and shorn by war, or choice, or cold, or shackled fate. Stitched inside out, so that only the wearer would know who they carried. You lift it gently around your shoulders. It fits as though sewn long ago, for someone shaped like your silence. And immediately, the corridor changes tone. The walls broaden around you to reveal a wide room once used for preparation, though not for ceremony, not in the southern sense. This is not a dressing place for crowning nor wedding. This was for departure. There's a low bench, another hanging tapestry, unfinished, draped along the far end, bundles of thick wool, many with pins still stuck in them. Old scraps of velvet sobered by time and soot. Beside them, Tools. A bone needle. A spool run dry. Copper scissors dulled with age. A woman's work, perhaps, but not courtlied. No embroidery here curled into birds or sigils. These were garments made for leaving. One cloak, deep charcoal, frayed along the hem where wood smoke must have kissed it again and again, rests over a chair carved from the same icy pine you once touched in the grove above. And beneath it, folded tightly into felted wool, lies something more curious. A belt, intricately woven from fabric, not leather. Its center bears a tiny pocket, sealed shut with wax that has melted, cooled, and melted many times again into a hardened smile. You touch the seal, and the wax gives way. Inside, parchment, worn, bent, thin as breath. The ink is old, but still clings to life. Stannis burns gods, but he forgets cloth. Cloth binds what fire cannot swallow. The note isn't signed, but beside it, faintly pressed into the lining, someone has sewn a final phrase. The cloak is never folded in death, only laid breath side up. You look down at your own cloak, the pale wool, the names stitched inside, and you begin to wonder. All the ancient tales tell us that the North is made of snow, of stone, of old gods that sleep too heavily to answer. But here, in the secret warmth of linen rooms behind the crypts, you learn different. The North is made of fabric, because fabric remembers shape. It carries weight. It stretches and returns. And when a name is lost to blood and salt and frost-bitten song, it is the linen wrapping it that grieves longest. You step forward into the fireless center of the room, where a circular depression lines the stone. You first think it's a hearth, but then catch it. A scent, wax, and beside the sunken circle, a slender metal tool. Iron, curved delicately at the handle. A cloak pin, carefully forged. Not for fastening, for pressing. Some believe the first Starks marked their dead not with tombs, but folds. That for every life lost to the snow, for every name no longer called, a square of fabric was folded 7 times, each layer tucked with breath and sealed with a mark made in warmed wax round a thumb. The cloth was never burned, never buried. It was cloaked, hung until the fabric fell apart from its own weighting. Above you now, a line of rafters, simple beams, and across them, dozens, no, hundreds of folds. Not full cloaks, but fragments, soft layers of heart-colored wool and smoke-dulled linen. They hang like forgotten prayers murmured through sealing wax and waxless mouths. The wind moans outside the stone once more, and the fabric stirs. Some folds ripple, some hang still, some twist ever so slightly, like remnants of movement caught just before stillness took root. You lift your hand and run your fingers along the edge of the nearest piece. There, again, that sensation, breath. The fabric breathes, or perhaps remembers breath. You turn once toward the archway that led you in, and see for the briefest moment, caught only in the corner of your gaze, a figure. Not tall, not whole, just a shimmer, like linen pulled through slow air. You blink. It is gone, but where it stood, a pin remains. On the ground, you stoop to pick it up. Carved into its side, a single word, perhaps an old house name. Stranwen, unknown to you, but you carry it. And when you do, your cloak feels heavier, not burdened, full. You pass out of the folding room with that weight swaddled against your shoulders, silent as snow melting into dusk. The wind follows no farther. It stops at the door, and you wonder if the wind remembers fabric, too. Somewhere behind you, hidden in the folds of cloth and wax and waiting, A breath is being held, and you carry it now, without knowing how long it has stayed unspoken. The cloak is warmer than it was moments ago, or perhaps you've grown quieter, and now feel what it has always remembered. The names pressed against your shoulders stir not with movement, but with acknowledgement, like a hand resting faintly atop yours without pressing down. This is how Winterfell speaks, not in voice, but in the spaces between the rituals. There is no stairwell this time, only an incline, slow and gentle, carved in stone so subtly that it seems the natural path of earth rising to meet light. Inno lanterns line it, but above, a glow waits. Sunlight? No, it's brighter than flame, yet softer than day, as though time gathered dust and let it shine from within one small place. You emerge into a chamber that does not belong here, and yet belongs completely. You know it instantly, though you've never seen it before. It feels like stepping into a story told to you in sleep. The ceiling curves high in a perfect dome, seamless, patterned not with frescoes or wooden ribs, but with rings of white stone fitted so tightly they resemble the memory of snowflakes. At the center rests a platform, not high, not regal, a single slab, bordered on all four sides by narrow channels of water no deeper than a thumbprint. The water loops a perfect rectangle around it, curling at the corners, circling again and again, unbroken. And above that platform, the impossible. Snow. Not frost, not ash snow. Drifting down, silently. No source above. No open sky. Just floating patterns of white, full-bodied and slow, parting in the air like sleep coming gently into the chest. You move into the snowfall. It doesn't melt against you. It settles, rests, and then, on your eyelash, a flake. It does not fall. It remains perfectly still, as though unsure what century it has entered. You walk to the edge of the water channel, kneel. It is perfectly still, not cold, a memory of cold. Its surface reflects the light in ripples of white and silver and softest blue, too faint for pigment, a color only the tired could see. The slab in the center bears no markings, except for the snow. There is no dust here, only snow, undisturbed, except for one lone place, a handprint, pressed into the snow gently as breath. Not made recently, faint around the edges, nearly erased. But it is there, splayed slightly, thumb curled inward, as if the one who rested their hand here did so slowly, trembling. And near it, another mark, not another hand, something smaller, a child perhaps, a sigil pin fallen and left behind. You study its shape, simple, uncut steel, rusted, but its base curls slightly into a spiral, and along its edge, a tiny groove of dark blue. Not painted, stone, sapphire, but dulled. You lift it slowly, and find, beneath it nothing, no name carved into the slab, no words, only lines drawn in ice. Melted, refrozen, then melted again. A single trail of snow stretching down the edge of the slab, arcing to where the water laps, always so gently, in silence. You remember the stories whispered of that day, when snow fell at summer's noon, a weather without sky, a sorrow too old for weather's rules. It was said to be an omen or a sorrow or a reckoning, but the Northerners did not name it disaster. They called it return. The old wives still speak of it, low into dusk, looped into yarn and stew and ash and animal bone, that when the north weeps in warmth, something buried shifts, something beneath the wolf's stone, not vengeful, not wild, something remembering. You reach to touch the snow on the platform now, and for a heartbeat, The room changes. Not shape. Sound. It hums. Barely. As if something in the stone had been waiting for contact, not with blade or hammer, but skin. Light begins to dance in the dome above, not moving, not flickering, only thickening. The snow falls in spirals now, inward, and above, the circle at the dome's center ripples. Salt. You smell it first, carried on phantom air, sea salt, done weeping. The snowflakes begin to fall faster, just briefly, then return to their still drift. You bow, not because of rule, but because you feel it. This room does not request power. It requests rest. The place is a reprieve for the unburied. Not the dead, the paused. Figures who stood too long in the storm of their name, and needed stone to hold it for a while. You sit now, on the lip of the water's edge, and the snow folds softly into your hood. You raise your fingers and trace the motion of several flakes as they pass, each one bearing a shape, an echo, words sealed not in phonemes, but in pattern. One feels like a promise, another a loss. One, perhaps, a secret burning too long behind tight teeth. You do not speak here. To speak would be to push air into a room made of breathless awe. But in your chest, something releases. A part of you that has watched too long, folded too often, borne the shape of other names. Inhales for the first time, and the snow greets that breath, like it recognizes it, knows it, folds around you, and becomes slower still. Somewhere far above, a bell rings once in the courtyard behind stone. Not loud, but felt. You rise. The print remains. The water ripples once. You leave the pin at the center of the slab, where hand reached for hand, and snow wept upward, then downward again, like sorrow remembering its shape, and peace remembering it could exist. You bow once more, and step out, back through the hall, back into the clasp of stone and deeper stone, but not unchanged. Now, the weight you carry whispers softly, like snow brushing linen. No louder than that. The doorway shuts behind you without sound, as if the air itself pressed it closed. Your feet feel heavier now, not with burden, but with the hush that lingers after revelation. There is a strangeness in your breath, not labored, but layered. Each inhale is touched by something more ancient than frost, and each exhale is folded into some quiet garment you cannot see. The snow still clings to your shoulders, though it melts into nothing when you notice it, like a page that forgets it's writing the moment you try to remember the words. And how strange it is. The silence still hums with that snowfall. Or is it something else now? A string pulled deeper. A thread at last freshly uncovered. Your path curves slightly to the east wing, into the narrower galleries. There is no formal entrance here, but you know it's the way. There's no reason, just certainty, like breath drawn before sleep and already forgotten upon waking. You pass through ragstone halls whose shapes mislead the eye, walls angled a little too tightly, corners that hold no right angles, built by hands more concerned with feeling than appearance. And there in the half-dark, unlit and unclaimed, you find the gateway to the folktale hall. A gallery of memory not made for record, not made for history, only story. Whispered first where the hearth goes out and the meat turns cold in the pot, where the wolves begin to pace near the edge of firelight, and the last few words are spoken not toward understanding, but toward dreaming. These stories do not belong to books. They belong to echoes. You enter. Along the inner walls, rows upon rows of carved panels stretch not upward, but downward. Set waist-high, each etched with soft grooves, scenes of things too strange for lineage. You stop at the second. The carving is darker, polished by many hands. And though the wood is pale ash, the oil from countless fingers has shaped it into dusk. You run a hand across it. The image forms only because you touch it. It resists the eye. But under your fingertips, you find it. A wolf, slimmer than its kin, its legs long as saplings, its back hunched as though carrying something deeply internal. And in its mouth, not a heart, not a sword, but a leaf, a single leaf, etched with perfect softness, trembling at its stem as though falling. Some say it was carved to remember a tale passed only by salt wives of the northern coasts. A wolf that once chased a falling leaf not to hunt it, but to follow it home. She ran for days through snow and sleep. When the sky turned gray and the ground thinned, she chased it into mist, and did not return the same. Those who saw her last claimed her eyes had darkened with a pale fire, and her howl no longer called to mate or pack, but to tree, the wolf who followed the winged leaf. You move to the next basin panel. A tree bows here, carved in curve like a giant slow-moving wave. Upon it, lanterns, over 50, a tale not remembered clearly, only as hinted rhyme. One leaf lit 100 truths. One tree bore sorrow's flame. But 50 lanterns hanging down. Could not recall her name. The carver, anonymous, has etched the corner with a symbol never seen before on any Stark banner. A teardrop woven with thread, perhaps a needle. Beneath that, 3 small lines. And beside them, one raised circle, pressed almost imperceptibly into the wood itself. It rattles when touched. Not stone. Metal? You try it again. The circle shifts slightly, and the panel releases from the wall. Not outward, but downward. You kneel quickly. A drawer. Inside, wrapped around a dry stick of weirwood no longer than a forearm, is a piece of cloth. Too thin to be the usual woolen cloak or mantle. It's richly aged, dark with what may have once been red, but has bled into wine-dark soot over time. Folded carefully into its center, a page of fabric-bound parchment. You open it. Each letter is stitched, thread dipped in pale gold. They don't shimmer. They remember. This isn't text. It's declaration. To run is not to flee. To fall is not to fail. To turn is not to shame. Only those who stay asleep cannot be forgiven. It is rolled back again by your hand before you know why. No date, no name. You restore the cloth to its cradle. And when you rise, you feel it, watching, but not as fear, as attention. Not once, in all these rooms, has judgment walked alongside you. Only presence. The next panel shows something stranger still. A wolf with wings. Again, not outspread, not predator, just there. Wings not feathered, but curved like sprouts or smoke, meant less for soaring than for holding silence. It's confused perhaps with griffin myths downriver, now whittled into southern stories. But here, this creature is not conquest. It is return. Below it, a boy, one hand raised, the other open, and in his shadow, 2 wolves, one bone white, one black as fog, unchained. This image is older, rougher, less refined, but truer. It's shaped not by artisan, but by witness. So soft, you've almost stepped past it. The line cut too faintly to show unless your eyes are tired enough. Bran the Broken was not broken. He fell so he could fall past the world and land beneath it. You step back. Snow. In your cloak. Still falling? But you're inside. You check the edge of your hood. Still dusted. And the faint smell. Salt. Again. Faint. Like the leaf on the wolf's tongue. Winged at the edge. You step away from the panels and look down the corridor. It narrows, ends, not in a wall, but in a curtain, thin, wool, dusty blue, embroidered not with wolf or word, a single stitched mark, very small, a curled shape, incomplete. You reach to part it. The space behind is silent. Only a window. A small stone throne sits here, hunched in shadow, empty. A great window above it, shaped like an eye, open to nothing but fog drifting in long strands across the winter sky. You cross the floor slowly. Stand before it. The throne is crude, not regal, built from flat stones lashed together with rope, twine, and thumb-pressed wax. But something rests across the seat. A strip of fabric. Blue. Simple. Braided at the ends, as if it once wrapped a wrist. And hanging beside it, a frayed lock of hair. Dark, dusted with gray. Tied in cloth. You don't ask. You simply bow. Because this was the resting tale. The one last turned away. And now seen. Acknowledged. In fog and leaf and breath. You step back from the throneless watcher, and the curtain sways, closed by no hand. Only story, only air. You step away from the watcher's room, and the air behind the curtain folds shut like a chapter not written, but remembered. The fog draped beyond the window remains a thought unraveling past stone, never quite arriving. You leave it untouched, and in the belly of Winterfell's deep corridors, you feel something shift, not behind you, nor before, but within. As though the story you've walked is no longer guiding your feet, but opening behind your ribs. Wide, quiet, and slow as breath through wool. Now, the path draws upward, not steep, not even stone for a time. Just packed earth, a narrow slope, lined by forgotten timbers and the softened corners of torch alcoves left long unlit. This part of Winterfell sees few feet and fewer names. But every northern wind passes through this wing, descending through the stones like script through skin. You reach another door. Unlike the others, this one bears a carving. A wolf. Not a stark wolf. Not the snarled shape stitched into banners or carved into keeps. This wolf lies down. Its head is turned, one single eye open, watching something just outside the carving's frame. A small flame has been notched below the chin, clay base, curling wick, and just above it, smoke. Not flame. This is not a door meant to open easily. But you place your hand upon it, and it knows you. Sound disappears for a moment, then returns as something different. You pass through into a long, low room. The light here changes again, amber-colored and soft at the edges, as though the room itself is covered in hide. Your cloak breathes close to your skin now. The names stitched inside thrum faintly, as if responding to the shift, to the hush of melted wax still warm from stories told not by maesters, but by fire. You've entered the Truth Hall, or, as it is still called in old tongue by the last keepers of hearth songs, Veiny Estrin, where the breath divides the lie. And through the slow still of this corridor, the fire begins to meet its ink. One wall, lined with low shelves. Scroll after scroll, wrapped in faded linen, tagged with simple markers of bone, not feather. You kneel beside the shelf at eye height and draw one gently into the light. The fabric binding it has not been touched in decades, possibly more. You loosen the thread, pulling it gently apart from its final resting fold. And what you find within contradicts what you've believed for years. What many believed. Book and show, story and myth. All told Lyanna Stark the same way. A maiden caught between vows and violence. Wild but dead. Fell for a Targaryen. Bled too young. Buried too soon. Beautiful. Silent. But here, on this page, her story lives wrong. Not wrong because it lies. Wrong because it simplifies. You hold the scroll by its corners, and the writing within is beautifully paced. Sharp-edged letters, not courtly, but true to a hand that knew how to write while riding, or breathing, or braiding cloth. It isn't signed, but you know whose it was. The lines are part statement, part dream. She rode through the fields of dusk alone, not seeking escape, but returning to where silence spoke kindly again. The smell of myrrh was not his. It came from me. I gathered it each winter to press into my gloves so that the breath from my horse would smell like hollow wood and snowfall. He did not carry me. I followed. Northmen do not chase shadows. We sleep in them. The writing stings, not from fire, but snow. It is history soft as frost, and just as cutting once you kneel beneath it long enough. You tuck the cloth gently back into the scroll and place it down. Above it, etched into the stone by some local hand trained not in calligraphy, but in quiet. She bled only once, and it was for memory. You step backward slightly and rest your eyes on the next scroll spine. This one bears a symbol, a wolf and rose. Crude, smudged, the ink has bled into the linen. Another tale, opened gently, within it, letters. Personal, fragmented, some unfinished, written to her. About her. One from Benjin, still young, another unsigned. You return them carefully. The firelight beside you flickers. A candle you did not light. One that wasn't burning when you entered. Then, from the wall directly opposite the shelf, another telling. Mud over marble. A story pressed into visual. A mural older than any southern painting could mimic. Nothing here seeks beauty, only preservation. And on the wall, Lyanna again. Or a wolf who bore her shape. You see her riding not for love, but for silence. Not to escape, but to return. The background blurs around her. Her face undetailed. All attention paid to her hand. What she is holding is strange. Not a blade, not reins, not letter nor token. A lock of hair? No. A torn ribbon. Blue, but wet. Made of nothing southern. The water droplets trace from the ribbon to the wolf beneath her, and the words lining the bottom are rendered only in bone paint. Some rivers were never meant to be crossed dry. You know now this tale was never hers alone. It belongs to a pattern of wolves and dreams, and those chased for silence rather than voice. She is not a symbol, not a sacrifice. She is a question the snow kept asking long after the castle forgot her name. You move past the mural, deeper still. At the end of the room, a low stone table. Nothing upon it except a tallow spear meant to burn slow and absolute. And just behind it, two shadows. Carved into the wall, never named. Just traced outlines. One taller, one smaller. Standing side by side, hand within hand, but drawn without detail. Between them, a blank space. It is shaped like the dire wolf, but the lines are unfinished. Only curves. No eyes. No fangs. No judgment. As if waiting for the breath that will define it last. You stand inside that breath now. The fire flickers again. A single page drifts from the table's edge and lands near your boots. You lift it. It bears no ink, just stitching. One ribbon, one leaf. A wolf, bent, watching, not guarding, witnessing. And below it, the word stitched in the old tongue. Truth. You fold it once, press it gently to your chest. And when you pass back through the door, beneath the curled smoke of the wolf carved in that low, quiet watcher's pose, the breath you carry deepens. Not because the story is finished, but because now, more than ever, you understand that in Winterfell, truth is not spoken. It is stitched, pressed, held, and laid breath side up, before sleep remembers it. There is a stillness now that walks with you. You feel it in your shoulder, in the fold of your cloak, where the stitched names ride against your back like something warm, something breathing, something keeping watch. They shift slightly as you return to the deeper halls, not in weight, but in presence, as though the discussion in the truth hall had not ended, only gone more quiet. You hear them pulsing, not with speech, but with memory laid into motion. Ahead, a tunnel opens westward. It is shaped wider than the others, rounded at the ceiling, yet low in spirit. Not heavy, just slower. Things rest here, not just beneath stone, but between it. You walk the length of 2 heartbeats strung together and step into the next place. And it strikes you before anything else. Scent. Salt. Heavy. More than air. More than memory. It creeps through the stone like tears held in the lash too long. The Salt Mother's passage. No dripping water. No pools overhead. Just air, swallowed by time and left to turn brine. You place your palm to the wall. A fine crust lingers beneath your touch, silt hardened once, then softened again by dreaming. They say this part of Winterfell is alive in winter, not because of heat trapped in the walls, but because salt seeks warmth in grief. That's what draws it here. That's what stains the stone. You walk farther inward. Here, the stories change. They do not belong to kings and builders, not even to wolves. The Salt Mother's legend was kept only in soot and ritual clay, a tale held by wet nurses and widowed cooks, passed alongside bone broth during the blackest moons and pressed into cloth folded into despair. She was not a god. She was longing. Shape unclear. Some said she was woman once. Others, river. Some, just a single alveolus from the god's last sigh before speech. But all agree, she made snow from sorrow. Where it falls, something is always being remembered. You kneel in the narrowest part of the corridor where the salt grows darker in tone, and where the roots form, because they do, from the cracks overhead. Small, unnatural, thin black roots, curling downward toward the floor like hair dipped in ink. They're not from the weirwood overhead. Those grow in silence. These grow in grief. And they weep. Tiny beads of salt sweat from their ends in the quiet, sticking to the candle-slick walls like sequins of loss. You reach upward, not to touch, but to see. A bead of salt releases, falls against your knuckle, stays there. To some among the mountain clans who still whisper their own holies against wind and wolf, salt is not only for preserving, but for promising. A salted cloth buried over the stomach of a stillborn child was said to carry memory into the next body, the next breath, the next name. You peer at the floor now. Lines. Smooth ruts carved into the flagstones where watches used to pace. Not guards. Women. Salt wives. Hearth hands. The listeners. This is where the grief was spun. This was not a room for mourning, but for shaping it, reweaving, attending its body. Further down, past a bend only light can guess, a stone table rests in the dark. Low, wider than most. Its edges are corded with thread marks, as if dozens upon dozens of fabrics had once been smoothed over it, generation after generation. And there in the center, a bowl, not clay, crystal, smooth and thin, nearly veined. It shakes slightly with your approach, not from your steps, from breath. Your breath draws slower, and the crystal responds. It is empty, of liquid at least, but something lines the bottom. Salt, piled in perfect concentric circles, coiling inward toward a dot not carved, but absent. There is no pattern, exactly, just emotion made shape. And in that shape, the suggestion of a story darker than the ones above. They say the Salt Mother left her child at the base of a pine tree laced with snow. It was not offering. It was return. The tree had borne the child's name before the mother carried it. She only brought it back. And from that snow, the first salt fell. You draw a finger near the edge of the bowl, not inside it. But the air thickens. On the far side of the table, a single shawl rests. It is black, but not by dye. Black from where? From use. From oil. It was worn across many winters. And stitched along one edge, near invisible blue thread. Looped into circles. Nothing prestigious, no sigils. Just loops. 13. You run your finger along it. And feel soft wax. Like fingertips dipped in prayer, sealed with silence. You do not weep, but you allow the quiet to settle in your chest the way snow settles onto windowsills unvisited. That, the old crones used to say, is the Salt Mother's blessing. Not tears, but holding, the ability to house sorrow, to keep it warm, to shape it into weather others can walk through. A folded paper nearby has long since given up its ink, but the impression still lingers in the fiber. You lift it slightly, and there, beneath where meaning used to live, one final pressed mark. An outline of two hands, overlapping, pressed into salt. You press your own hand over it, and the bowl of salt stirs, only slightly, as if raising a breath that has waited lifetimes to be carried briefly, just high enough to taste the air, then nothing. Stillness again, not absence, gentle release. You leave the bowl and take the shawl, carry it not as memory, but as honor, as gratitude for sorrow carried. On your way out, you touch the roots again, and now your finger draws away a soft outline. The first letter of a name that will never be spoken, but may still be dreamt. The salt will remember. You do not need to. The shawl folds once across your shoulders. The cloak atop it pulls closer. And for the first time, in the halls beneath Winterfell, you feel ready to rise. You rise gently from the Salt Mother's chamber, though no stone leads you. Only silence pulled taut with memory. The shawl sits beneath your cloak now like breath under bone, and you feel, with each step, its pressure easing into you. Not burden, not grief, but the still presence of something that once held great sorrow and refused to give it away. This is how the North carries the weight of things, never on backs, never in swords, but in layers, enfolding, in what is worn near the chest and never spoken. The passage turns. You follow without thinking. This part of the keep descends not by stair or ramp, but in soft curves, like the inside of a shell. It takes you downward by degrees, each bend born not of a mason's plan, but of necessity. You run your hand along the wall, shale at first, then slate. Then suddenly, smooth stone, clay polished by years. Cold, but not with winter. With warning, a scent finds you here. Ink, you know it instantly. Sharp, dry, metallic at first, then sweet near the end, like old wine brought too close to fire. You breathe in, and the room exhales. You step softly into what must once have been buried as storage. Too low for chambers, too wide for roots. You pass through a long hall of hanging scroll skins and split vellums stitched back together with sinew thread. Most sway slightly in the movements of your passing, as if drawn to you not as reader, but as carrier. They recognize the weight within the cloak. They flutter once, gently, and then still. These were not the scrolls kept in Maester's chains. These were not sanctioned records. These were his. The forgotten, Maester they call him, in jest, in jester's tones at inns along the King's Road. A Stark-attached scribe whose post was revoked, whose name was removed from the rosters, for writing what should not have been written. The chamber of ink-stained fingers was once a resting place for scrolls considered too likely to contain. What? Truth? Not quite. Memory. Without permission. That's more dangerous. You stop before a low altar, curved from pine darkened by soot. Scatterings lie across it, featherless quills, dried beetles, resin smudges. Captings kept sealed beneath stones. Despite age, some pages are still drying, or pretending to. You brush dust from one scroll's edge. There, half-folded, the Maester's entry begins. You will not read this in the Chronicle, nor the Winter Book, nor will the ravens carry it forward into neat columns. But it happened. I was there. I wrote nothing at the time, because the truth was still getting dressed. You unroll the scroll and see names half crossed out, half corrected. Parchments rewritten and buried beneath layered bindings. This was not just record, it was resistance. We are not meant to write everything. But when we do not write the things that ache just beneath the history, we allow memory to wander. Unparented, wind-held, the second scroll begins. Ink stains your hand as you handle the folds. There's a sound now behind you. Not footstep, not wind. Scratching, not loud, not insistent, but steady. The sound of thought forgetting how long it's been alone. You follow it. It leads you toward a smaller bench, carved from stone left charcoaled. And behind that bench, a narrow slot in the wall, paper width. Just one. Thin. Easily missed. Inside, a single letter. Folded strangely. Not by seal or wax, but clasped under what appear to be iron filings pressed flat. The shape of the fold suggests secrecy, but something beyond secrecy too. Inside, a poem, written by hand not trained in verse. Every line uneven, but full with pulse. The ravens sleep where I cannot. The scrolls untie their threads in my mouth. I tried to bind truth with neat conclusions, but the eldest names rot longer than lies. Winter came before ink. I only dream along its edge. That's all we do. We write and beg snow not to whisper it away. It ends with a shape. A quill snapped, not broken in anger, surrendered. You tuck the letter back where it lay. There is a weight now behind you. Something stirs, not to frighten, only to witness. A shape, half-formed, beside one of the scroll racks. You do not look, because you already know. The Maester left no tomb, no statue. He remains in ink, in the fingers stained and dismissed, in the words copied despite command. A basket rests beneath the final bench in this room. Inside, books bound awkwardly, stitched too tightly, some stuck shut. You lift one carefully. The cover bears wax, long cracked, but holds. Inside, ledgers, not gold, not grain, names, kindred names, fractured names, entered with no supporting bloodline to justify them, but written all the same. Jill on snow, fed beside puppet dawn, Rowell NYM. Tamsin, not snow, not sand, only ice. Every margin is filled with notes, not speculation. Description. Did not weep during first thaw. Dreamed of tree covered in ribs. Touched statue and whispered home, no name given. This wasn't bookkeeping. It was belonging. Archived because spoken lineage failed them. Archived because memory didn't. You close the book and hold it for a second before replacing it. And now, one final item. Resting on a stack of unstitched binding, black parchment, already curling from age. An ink jar, open to air, but not evaporated. The ink is shimmering, pale gray, threaded with silver leaf. It moves. When you lift the jar, the liquid tilts like a starless ocean and floats inside it. A single feather, dark, small, from no raven, crow, perhaps even older. There's a whisper at the top corner of the parchment beneath it. We write not to be remembered. We write so those asleep may hear again. You touch your finger to the air above the ink. But do not stain. You already carry enough ink in your breath, and enough silence to call it a language now. No further mark is needed. You leave the jar open. Let it breathe. Let it wait. Like you, like all truths, buried not in tombs, but in thoughts so deep, only silence can draw it. The cloak clings slight as you exit, pulled toward something. The shawl shifts underneath, and some part of your stride changes now, not forward, but beneath, as if a story just wrote itself into your bones. The corridor after the ink chamber does not widen. It does not lead into ceremony or light. It closes slightly, stone drawn closer against each side like the folding of hands before sleep. You step not into passage, but into pause. For a time, there's nothing. No hall, no floor you would name, no sense of descent or rise. Just space, pressed quietly around breath, until the air shifts again, not colder, not darker, just more aware. You are being watched, and you are not unwelcome. The walls are still stone, but softer somehow, porous and strange, dotted with tiny gaps like the inside of bone. You trail your fingers along the side and feel warmth coming through. Not heat, not flame, but something small and rhythmic, like breath from deep behind the stone. They say the walls breathe in Winterfell, that after enough snow has fallen, the keep seems to ripple, air folding through forgotten crevices, alive in the marrow of the place. Some dismiss it as architectural charm, the clever trapping of hot springs carved into the bones of the keep by Bran the builder himself. Others believe the explanation lies below, far below, where steam and time conspire to keep memory warm. But the old ones, the ones still buried, whisper close to trees and root wells. They say a different thing, that these walls do not breathe warmth. They breathe witness. What was seen, not just by eyes, but by stone, by wind. For stone sees longer, and what lingers in its filament breathes back when you least expect it. You pause beneath a great, sheer face of wall, round and smooth as glass if glass were made of grain. A funny thing happens here. Your shadow splits. The torchlight bends wrong. You see yourself moving sideways just slightly, not astray, but parallel, like something older walking beside you. You reach the curve in the wall and find carvings pressed so faintly that you mistake them for scratches until your hand passes over them. They warm beneath your fingers. You trace. One line curves like a word, but has no letters. A second turns upward like a staircase, then spirals. A third breaks off entirely. Then the fourth. A handprint. Small, faint, pressed into stone during its last breath of warmth. A child's hand, maybe, or a woman's, folded in soft years. Some say this is where the castle learned to listen. This wall, known by no map, no title, recorded the first argument between two brothers before they became Starks. Stowed here, the sound of their breath lingers. A push, not a violent one, just the space between words that were nearly unspoken. And the wall kept it, not as judgment, but as rhythm. Just ahead, the path flattens again and enters a wider chamber. Not large, not deep, but precisely echoed. You speak nothing, and hear it return seconds later, not from the wall, from beneath. A soft response of silence, shaped like your own unsaid thoughts. This room is built not for voice, but for listening back. You tread softly now. Each step feels thinner, as if walking inside a sound that has forgotten its source. In the center, a low dais. Around it, 7 stones. Flat, cracked in places. Each one bears a shallow well in its center, no more than a dip. Inside the dips, remains. Not skeletal, not ash. Cloth, olive dark, pressed in rings, stained with ink and wax and salt. Old cloaks, but smaller. You kneel near one. See how it's slackening with time, pulped to threads. Still knotted at its corners. Each corner bears a bead. You lean in. The beads are not jewels. They are buttons, decoded from old tunics, old coats. Each tied on with thread that didn't match, neither in color nor in intention. Quick work. Favored hands. Cloth preserved not to honor rank, but to honor weight. They are night cloaks, or pretenders to that name, issued to hands not sworn, not vowed, just watchful. Folk who watched, who listened, and never got to say, maesterless, nameless. They came here. Saturday. Listen back. When you rise again, your eyes catch the seam in the wall beside you. And now you know. Another truth. There is a passage here, not visible, but felt. The air presses against your ribs as though inviting, not demanding. You turn toward it, and suddenly, behind you, movement. Not wind, a breath. The walls. They exhale, not with air, but with soundless shape. You know now. Winterfell listens. Then slowly, it remembers. Stone holds heat from what was felt, not just what was said. The walls here record breathing, not in line or language, but in warmth. The passage guides you further, and you follow. It is narrow, single shoulder fit, ragged at spots where the stone splits around deeper roots. Touches of fabric cling to branches embedded in the wall, as though even here, cloth found its way into history's skin. Then at once, an opening. A rounded corner gives you light. Red, dim, flickering. A single candle left in a stone ripple too shallow for ritual. You approach. Its wax has bled across the floor in long weeping drips. And in the pattern of melt, you see shapes. A wolf curling backward, head over paw, but not etched. Folded. Somehow the wax melted in a way that remembered breath. A circle of wind around it gives the illusion of motion, like the wax remembers fire. Even with the flames still burning, the warmth is gone. Only the memory of heat remains. Somewhere in the corner, behind the candle's flicker, lies an object. You fear to call it a book. It is too intimate. More like parchment pressed into affection. It rests in a cradle of cloth sewn directly into the wall. You sit, gently unwrap it. Inside, no words, no dates, only marks. Breaths, perhaps, darkened where the scribe exhaled too long. Each page bears a symbol at the bottom, not repeated, only one per page. Each seems to end a sentence that never began. Like a breath before reply, a gesture before sorrow, a touch before name. The walls here breathe not because they are alive, but because someone taught them to hold lives, to stretch into the silence just wide enough that every unspoken story might still echo, even if it was never told aloud. You place the book back, tuck it in. The wax wolf stares at you, caught in its paws of melt and memory. And now the walls. Breathe out again, softer, quieter, acknowledging you, not as intruder, but as witness. You step back into the passage. It closes behind you silently, leaving only candlelight to burn where your breath once paused. The path leads upward again, but each step feels less like ascent and more like surfacing through dream. The whisper of your boots rises only slightly from the stone. Lighter now, not because the weight has gone, but because something carries it with you. Cloak, shawl, silence, salt. They have all learned how to move inside the stillness. And in doing so, the stillness opens wider. You breathe differently here, as if the air has uncurled for you. The passage is straight now and narrow. It does not spiral. You begin to notice a shift in the air, sweeter by a degree, tinged with something almost metallic. Only just, like copper left too long in linen, or rain on old bronze. Light ahead, copper light, candlelight, but aged, diffused by glass. Then sound, the faintest clink, a metallic ting, like a ring against stone. And then, the room, wider than others, taller too, ventured into by no cold or echo. But despite its sweep, despite the height of its ceiling, it feels close. You step inside. There is no door, only a threshold. The room is cloister-shaped, stone arches gliding low over pools of amber candlelight. Two great candelabras stand at either end, not lit, only cold holders. Between them, a single table carved from northern ironwood, rounded edges, a place for sleep to soften. Laid upon it, a candle, one, still lit, lower than it should be, a third of its wax having softened into a pool of folds under its base, as though trying to flow backward. And kneeling beside it, not a figure, the trace of devotion, a cushion worn flat in the exact shape of knees that once bent here. Long ago, not just once or once again, every night. Queen Alara's candle, they call it, or they used to. No scroll records the name but one, lost in the fire within the Tower of the Hand 2 generations before Robert's rebellion. But the story was written in silence long before ink ever discovered it. A stark queen, one of Ironwell, they say, a seer of cold harvests, not because she saw futures in snow, but because she feared warmth when it arrived too soon. She never set the throne, never ruled aloud, but every dusk for a decade, she came to this room. She lit this candle, and she apologized. The whispers differ as to why. Some believe it was for a child sent to the Night's Watch by forced edict, a line too thin to uphold its own name. Some say it was a guilt deeper, that she herself broke a vow meant not for lords, but for gods, that the gods would hurt her and answered. Others say she never spoke a word aloud, only kept her promises burning through wax. You approach the candle. The wick still holds a hollow beneath its soft curl, the echo of a breath just released. You can feel it. This room is made of breath withheld. You do not need to kneel, but you do. The cushion still has warmth. Not heat, oil perhaps, or memory's touch. Across from the candle, there is a stone shelf no taller than a knee. Laid across it, a cracked jewelry box. You reach out to open it. The lid shifts easily, unbound, as though no hand has touched it in years, but the latch still knew how to answer. Inside, a ribbon, outspread like a line of scarlet ink. Torn, frayed at both ends. The kind used to tie braid or book spine. Beneath it, wax. A seal, not a house sigil. Presswork. the symbol of a shore, waves lapping thrice into semicircles. An edgeland, a place between firmament and submersion. It marks a place few now recall, east of Widow's Watch, near enough to taste salt and rain, where one stark queen came upon a beached whale long dead, covered in wildflowers, and wept because the storm that killed it had not left a name behind. The wax seal must be from then. You lift it gently and slide your thumb across it. It breaks, not apart, only inward, releasing not dust nor scent, but warmth. For a single moment, so strange and small, the stone beneath your knees seems to pulse. The candle flickers higher, and within its light, a figure appears on the far wall, cast in shadow only, but unmistakable. Not a queen, not a ghost, just a woman, kneeling, hands forward, one holding nothing, one holding a letter, imaginary, imagined, passed to no one, given to no god, only to the shadows that listened, only to the wax that remembered, and still remembers. The ribbon begins to sing, not out loud, not in air, but in you. You hear her, Lyanna of the candle flame, the one who whispered not for forgiveness, but for silence's return. You turn your eyes once more toward that broken wick, blackened, but waiting. You lift the candle. The wax underneath carries prints, soft ones, like the curve of fingers folded nightly into prayer, sighs, or regret. The prints do not match any crown, but they match your own. You set it back and fold your hands. The shawl beneath your cloak shifts again, this time not in mourning, but in echo. The room brightens only at its edges, the kind of light that does not come from flame, but from wax passed down through story. You glance once more to the wall. The shadow is gone, but the ribbon remains. You fold it, press it into the hem of your cloak. It sticks, without thread, without pin, as though it was always meant to rest there. Then you rise, and as you do, the candle goes out. Only smoke now, rising like the memory of a vow no longer broken, but quietly done. The air closes like a book left open one page too long, and the silence kneels beside you as you walk toward the darkened hall. With no need for light, the hall accepts the absence of the flame as if it had been waiting for the room to fall quiet once more. The moment Queen Lyanna's candle dies, the air folds itself in. Not silence, not emptiness, but that inward hush born only when something has finally been returned to rest. You do not rush to fill it. You move nursing the memory through your bones, slow as thaw, your steps forming no echo now. Just weight, just memory. The corridor turns left into darker stone, colder by degrees that don't register first on skin, but behind the teeth, along the temples. Down here, the cold is not temperature. It is memory. The kind of memory that never truly died, only lay fractured, misremembered, reworded, rewritten by story and song and script. But down here, inside stone, within hush, the tale comes home to itself. This is the corridor history couldn't reach, where the bones of fact gave way to the breath of something truer than record. You are returned now to her, not in statue, not in tomb, but in breath. Lyanna, not the dead girl, not the stark rose plucked by dragon, not the wailing maiden dowsered in Targaryen salt, but the girl who sang to her horse instead of riding it, who whispered battle songs into birch bark and pressed them under her pillow, who rode because silence was louder than the hall, who bled because unfairness doesn't ask permission. You feel her begin before the hall shows anything of her. The air thickens with her name, not the one carved, the spoken one, the one carried mostly by wolves. You emerge into the chamber fated from myth, the one they deny, the one they deform. She is not here, but her breath is still on the wall. A narrow room, a square of still air, corners shaped like old stanzas. No candles, no sigils, only chalk. On the center wall, rain-washed markings, some washed away, others pressed until fossilized. A ring once drawn, broken at the seam. Pieces of animal glue cracked along the floor where a page had been ceremonially glued to the stone and left to dissolve into dust utterly. Deliberately, you kneel. Touch it. It lifts only a little. That same scent, salt and wax and ash. A southern perfume burned into snow. At the base of the far alcove, a slotted ledge remains filled with scraps. Not letters, memories. A pin, a braid ribbon so severely faded it's become near white. A dried starleaf flower, a blackened comb made of horn. And there, a piece of torn parchment with lines smudged past legibility. Only the last line remains. He did not steal me. I rode. I bled. I prayed for no winner. No seal. No title. No hand. Just the mark at the bottom. The long-notched curve of a pine branch spiral. It is the same shape you saw in the mural back in the Truth Hall. The leaf in the wolf's mouth. The dropped blue ribbon. The shadow pinned against the stone. The truth nobody wants sitting still. Someone once tried to tell it. They buried her answer. In myth. The show made her song a whisper. A chamber too soft. A birth too clean. A love too golden. A dragon granted innocence. But the book, the old book still up north, kept in iron-rung frost. It doesn't offer answers. Only weather. It says, she knew. He knew. A war came. She died anyway. But this room disagrees. This room does not offer tragedy. This room offers decision. Rough, ragged, torn from things placed wholly before their time. An altar stands at the back. Flat rock. Upon it, 7 needles. Dulled. Uneven. Each bound with sodden black thread. They weren't weapons. They were promises. In some parts of the North, before bannermen invented titles too dense to carry, women offered threads wrapped in metal not as contracts, but as delays. A call for someone to listen again before decree. Each of these needles was set here by a woman. Messages pressed into the stone. Not the history carved into throne rooms and towers, but quiet replies. I was there. She did not scream. It was not love nor fear. It was her choice. She rode. You take the closest one. Its metal is oxidized nearly green. Its thread blackened by time. There's a soft sound in the chamber then. Not wind, not whisper. More like the missing half of a sigh. A figure appears. Not before you. Beside you. Not in menace. Only in company. Not full. Only shape. Thin as steam against fog. Slender arm. Hair in 3 waves down the back. The ribbon is visible in profile. But it is not blue. It is gray. Steep dash with thread. The figure walks with you to the wall. You do not speak to her. There is no need. Instead, your hand finds the altar. You rest the needle there. Its thread touches ash. And the figure is gone. But the ribbon remains. Just once. It flutters. Not in wind. In return, you turn to go. And inscribed high along the entry wall, above head, above breath, above expectation. We will never know the whole of her. That is how she asked to be kept. You leave the chamber, and the light dims, not behind, but ahead, as though her story closed its own door. But her thread ties now among those folded into your cloak. Your shawl. You feel the names shift again at your shoulder. A rhythm now. A shaping. You are breathing among the unsaid. You are shouldering not truth, only knowing. The light ahead does not brighten. It recedes, slowly, gently, like hands slipping into sleeves, like a voice choosing not to finish a thought. This isn't the dark of fear. This is the dark that knows its place. It deepens not to threaten, but to allow you to continue forward with only the memory of light and the steady thrum of breath where heart meets step. The stone is colder now, but drier. Older. You know you're further from warmth now, and closer to something truer than flame. Something without name. 3 turns, each narrower than the one before. Not carved but worn, pressed into shape by the passage of feet that forgot themselves. By processions ghosted out of time. The cloak around your shoulders feels quieter. It does not lie flat, it listens. You feel the weight of absences in every stitch. What was spoken? What wasn't? And then you arrive. There is no threshold here. No door. Just a stillness. A border not marked in stone or step, but in air. You pass through it like falling into water. The room within doesn't present itself. It reveals itself in pieces, like something that does not welcome visitors, but recognizes their coming as inevitable. Here is the chamber of the word never written. No one speaks of it, not because they dare not, but because there is no description that does not undo its quiet. You stand still. You let your breath settle. As your eyes adjust, the room resolves. It is not empty, but it behaves like emptiness behaves, holding shape, holding echo. The floor is bare, the ceiling unseen. Mist rolls lightly along the ground, not fog, not steam. Air rising from within stone, lit by no visible flame. And in the center of the room, a pedestal, not tall, not elaborate, not regal, a block of untouched grain rock, bearing only one thing. No object, no scroll, no statue, only a blank page. At first glance, it seems parchment, but when you step closer, there's no texture, no fiber, no mark of ink. Just the shape of a page, etched in air, formed from what memory could not forget, and form dared not describe. You do not dare to touch it, but something in you wants to bow, not in reverence, but in response. You understand suddenly why no records mention this place, why even the shadows go still here. Somewhere, long ago, a truth was kept so quietly it never needed naming. Perhaps a person, perhaps a decision, perhaps a wound that changed the wind the way it moves between stone. But it left behind this, a center, a page, untouched, preserved not by ritual, but by collective omission. This is the cost of keeping the line. One word never written. One moment withheld so deeply that the shape of silence was etched into the architecture. You stand near it, and something occurs to you, not in language, but feeling. That echo in the crypt, that pause in the grove, that breath beneath the birch. They all led here, to the untold, to what the cold holds between each snowflake. You close your eyes, and in the hush, you begin to understand the shape of what cannot be remembered, not because it is lost, but because it was given, a gift sealed, protected, like keeping a child's name safe before the breath arrives to speak it. This unwritten thing is sacred, not refused, held. And as you stand, cloak drawing in against your ribs, the stitch of names resting against your back begins to shift. You feel it. This place threads a new silence among them. A knot of presence. No voice. No vow. Just the continuation of custody. You open your eyes. The mist has settled lower across the page now. You don't move it. You have already read it, or remembered the shape of it. And that is enough. You begin to step back, and then feel it. Not warmth, but proximity. You are not alone. Across the chamber, opposite, the stone leans inward, slightly angling toward a corner clouded in shadow. And there, a figure carved from shadow itself. Not statue, not flesh, not even presence, properly. More like the notion of endurance. You barely see it. A faint shimmer. But there's a face. No features. Only the direction of attention. It looks toward the blank. Not away. That is the final mark of understanding. This chamber is not about reverence. It is about guarding. And you are not its first guest, nor its last. You bow once, and the shimmer bows back, then recedes, folding into the fog like thread drawn back into wind. You trace the way you came, each footfall lighter. The socked passage beneath your boots recognizes you. The blank page rests behind you now, but carries forward. The word never spoken, never written, but always known. Woven, now, into the fold of your next step. The narrow corridor ahead exhales as you arrive again into movement. That is what it feels like now. Movement, not merely direction. There's less weight to your stride, though not because something has left you. If anything, you've grown heavier, more full, pressed in from every seam with knowledge you do not understand in syllables, but in space. The sensation begins behind your ribs, in the rhythm of your pace, in the careful way your hands now brush the stone beside you. That wordless page, embedded in nothing and everything, still trembles at your back like a breath not quite finished. It doesn't pull you. It folds into you. The same way a gust of air carries the memory of salt though no sea is near. And there's salt again. You taste it now. Not as storm, not as grief, but something older. A promise, sealed and buried. Wax salt, thread salt, contract salt. What lies ahead is not oath exactly. It is weight remembered. You follow the sound of trickling stone. Not water, not wind. Like sand falling grain by grain in a black hourglass. Each footstep feels nearer to something. The hall opens slowly. A chamber. Square. Built not for gathering, not for feasting, not even for storage, but for restraint. Walls of ironwood line the edges. Shelves worn not by time, but by solitude. And at the center of it, a dais. Low, uneven, constructed not with grandeur, but with urgency. There is no monument here, no heraldry, but laid across the surface, draped as though dismissed into stillness. Cloth, layered, waxed, dark patterned wool, and hardened linen folded 12 times over. A seal broken long ago and pressed back into false shape lies softly nearby, pale gray with age and grief alike. The weight of it keeps the fabric from forgetting itself. You approach, hands steady. The wax on top still smells faintly of animal oil and rain-pressed pine. And beneath it, you glimpse what lies within the folds. A document, tightly spun script work only visible through translucent parchment, sealed and resealed so many times a ring of hardened wax now frames it like a wound too old to bleed. You crouch beside it, knowing what you see cannot be broken, not by right, not by torch. This is the dowry of the wolf. Unclaimed, unfulfilled, unspoken, a contract written not between houses, but between possibilities. The legend of it ripples through the roots of Winterfell, carried only by the servants' firelight and the echoless prayers of those who have lost too many sons. Not a marriage pact, not land title, but something else. Reunion. You press your hand lightly to the wax. It holds. No warmth, but understanding. And as you touch it, You feel a vibration inside the grain of the parchment. Almost a sound. A name. Not yours. Not even one you've heard. But so close to every breath you've taken since entering the walls. You feel it move through your teeth. The contract has a name. One no maester dared transcribe. Some say Bran the Builder made it. Others, his ghost. But those whose lines trace furthest back among the bannermen believe it was written by fire, and preserved in wax kept slumbering in salt barrels for generations until someone whispered not yet into the ear of history. The room has grown dimmer now, not from failing fire, but from thickening time, like snow momentarily pausing in mid-fall. You lift the edge of the topmost cloth with reverence. There, among the inner folds, signatures, many false, few real, none familiar, but one stands unmatched, written not with quill, nor even blade, burned in, by seal, by brand. No, by repetition. It has been retraced hundreds of times. The name beneath it has been erased, but the motion of the hand remains. The curl, the slow press, the final downward stroke. Someone needed this acknowledgement. And no, I could be allowed to bear witness. Not unless that witness already carried the cold with them into the room. Like you refold the cloth, not back into perfect layers, but into breath. You notice something new in the shadows beyond the dais. A sculpture, hunched and unfinished, dusted with wax falling in teardrop shapes. A wolf carved only in outline, but not of stone, of wax, as if someone shaped the creature from drippings captured nightly over decades, layering one story upon another, silence cooling each night to make a coat. And there, upon its back, a chain, not iron, thread, handspun, short, still tied. You follow it. It leads to something under the dais. You stoop again, just below the shadow line, and find a scrap of woven parchment pinned beneath the weight of a small stone. You kneel and read. Nothing has been named, but the fire still waits. The wolf still carries. The vow is not dead. It only sleeps. Underneath, a symbol pressed into the parchment, not drawn. A wolf. Again, but smaller now, as if drawn by the hand of a child. This is no formal artifact. Someone left it behind as reminder. Or prayer. It's always difficult to distinguish one from the other here. You slip the note back beneath the stone, then turn. The walls have grown warmer, slightly, not in temperature, but in posture, as if they have stopped holding themselves so tightly, as if someone who has finally confessed no longer needs to whisper. You return to the archway. No name follows you, but something does. The presence of an unspoken truth that did not disappear when forgotten, only waited for the next walker to fold it once more. Into breath. Your hand finds the seal beside the entrance. It cracks, but no wax falls. Only breath escapes. Softly, as if the contract has exhaled. You pass through the arch again, though this time it feels less like crossing a threshold and more like being sifted. Your shoulders narrow. The fabric tightens against your ribs. You feel yourself drawn inward, not by will, not by fear, but by some quiet thread in the world that knows when a story must grow softer. The air here is still, but not dead. It feels as though sleep has already begun, and you've arrived not to disturb it, but to lie near it. To listen. Down a winding corridor shaped like flame, turned sideways, the halls begin to change again. They lose their clean cuts, their angles, their familiar shoulder-wide scaling. Instead, the stone smooths into suggestion, walls bowing inward, floor rounding beneath your feet like an old riverbed. You feel it immediately. You are within a passage shaped by dreaming. The salt remains on your cloak. The ink, too. The folds speaking behind your back remain folded. The needle stitch thickens slightly along your shoulder, as though something new has been threaded into the cloak since last you turned. But now, other things arrive. Smells. Bitter herbs. Raven feather. Sweet milk gone sour with time, then brought back to calm by winter's ash. This scent you recognize not from memory, but from something more distant, like a word spoken in a childhood dream before language fully took root. It pinches the air like incense, and as you follow it deeper, a single thought rises gently behind your eyes. Somewhere here, a child forgot their name. The tunnel narrows one last time, then blooms open like sleep unfolding. A small room opens before you. Stone paved, tree-rooted, a slow, slanted ceiling low enough to hush shoulders, but high enough to let story gather before fire. No fire now, only ashes, still glowing. In the center, a pile of cloth and ribbons, some wide as cloaks, others thin as binding. They're laid in a circle, almost haphazard, but too gentle to be truly so, and resting in the curve of fabric. A pillow of snowmelt. You recognize it immediately. No fluff, no straw, just snow, folded into thin cotton cloth and left to warm an imprint of something that once lay very small, and very still, and very soft. A child, no older than 5 winters. Impressions remain, soft indentations where weight once pressed for hours, days perhaps. Head, neck, elbow crease. The faint stipple of fingers curled into sleeves too big. And farther from the pillow, the sign of it. Feathers, black, pressed neatly around the edges of the cloth, as if encircling but not embracing. You do not need to be told what lie here. The stories never left. The boy who left the bed. The child who became something else. The raven's guest. No name was given at the time, and no name will be spoken here now. Instead, just presence. Just memory. Some say it was Bran. Others say it was not Bran, but something shaped like Bran. Or something Bran became. Or something that came back pretending to be him. The old women of the far hills, those who sew buttons in their aprons with bone thread, tell it differently. They whisper of a child too quiet for his own skull. So quiet that, one night, the ravens chose him. Not to eat, not to carry, but to suckle. Strange word for winged creatures. But the tale persists. They drew breath from bone and gave it to him, not in mouth, but in dream. And when he woke, he had no name left, but he had flight. You kneel at the edge of the melted cloth. The snow beneath it has not fully gone. You press a palm there, soft and warm. Still, this room is not lit, but it glows nonetheless. Fireless light, rising from somewhere between bone, stone, and cloth. Near the back, you find the cradle. Not carved, not silken, woven from strips of black felt, dug from old woolen coats, smoothed and rebound with fine string. Inside it, a bird skull, crowned with ash, peaceful, positioned not in death, but in rest. Here, sleep was the first gift. Not explained, not judged, not even understood, only given. And beside it, a bundle of parchment tied in twine, small and worn. You unfold it. Inside, no words, only a series of ink-blotted shapes drawn again and again. Trees, birds, antlers, stairs. And always, always, the circle again. This time, contained within a child's hand. Little fingers had picked this up, run them again and again over the same line. You fold it back, hold it to your chest. It does not carry story, but repetition, the ritual of not forgetting. You return it, gently. How many touched it? How many tried to remember what name was once spoken here? You rise again and step toward the far wall. It bears no carving, only the raw scraping of fingertips, points pressed into stone, as if a child tried to answer, but could not, or would not, or was never taught how. One marking catches your eye, a line curled not like a name, but like a shape. A wing, a hand, a boy, a bird? No way to say. Beneath it, softly embedded in the groove, a bit of wax, pressed there by finger, not by seal. Possibly the last moment someone tried to close this room behind them, not to bar passage, but to cocoon it, to keep it gentled, to keep it still. You lay your hand over the wax. It molds, barely, acknowledging not force, but presence, and the wall breathes slightly beneath your palm. The sound you hear is not breath, but dream, the faintest echo of feathers, of boy, of bird, and no contradiction in the two. There is no bed here anymore, but there is still a place to go. You leave the pillow undisturbed, the circle undisturbed, the cradle and parchment unshaken. You carry the absence on your shoulders like cloth. You carry the presence like thread. And when you pass into the entrance hall again, the air colder, you realize something has changed. Steps are shorter behind you, as if a child has risen and chosen again to follow. Or perhaps it was never the child, just the dream, still walking, very slowly, through the silence, toward you. The corridor narrows again, not in shape, but in intent. You feel the stone begin to weigh differently beneath your feet, not heavier, only deliberate, as though the earth under Winterfell has begun to listen, not politely, but with purpose. You've passed dream. You've passed vow. Now you move toward gesture. This is a chamber not shaped by speech or sleep, but by the act of carrying something no longer spoken. A weight too wordless for parchment. You follow that thread without knowing who began it. Down the hall, the architecture shifts. The stone turns darker, older. Not carved, not quarried, just revealed. Like the keep itself stepped aside and allowed something ancient to rise through it. The air is dry here, but kindness lingers. You notice it in the way your breath spreads softly before you, not chased away by cold wind or hunger, but welcomed, each exhale given space. And then, in the floor, a series of small depressions, gentle patterns of wear, as though something soft and heavy was once dragged across this corridor thousands of times. Braided rope, perhaps, or cloth, weathered not by storm, but by sorrow. A turn, then a chamber, circular, tapered toward the center, domed low. The walls are dark, veined with tiny white mineral threads, like spider webs caught in ash. They shimmer faintly with your movement. You enter. There are no torches, no light, but the chamber sees you. From the shadows, shapes begin to resolve. A garland of tattered banners, gray on gray. Shapes of wolves once proud, now blurred, distorted slightly by time and fold. They do not hang in glory, but in remembrance. Their fabric is stained not with blood or soot, but with something subtler. A question: who carried these? And why did no one raise them again? They hang at various heights, surrounding a singular structure at the room's center. An altar, though altar is not the true word. More like anchor. A block of shaped stone, lined with sigils carved not in triumph, but in mercy. They are unfamiliar. Not house marks, not iconography. They are private. A cracked tooth, a mountain curled inward, a single tear caught in a spiral of cot, each one scratched by a hand too stable for tremor, too heavy for indifference. This altar is not for gods. It is for names. And the names are not written in ink or stone. They are folded into cloth. You step around the side and find them. Folds. Swathes of black and gray, heavy linen and midnight velvet, laying with reverence across the altar's surface like the closing of eyes. Each fold bears a single trinket placed at its center. A bit of silver, a broken buckle, a ring without gem, a locking pin turned inward on itself, not broken, but decided. And one, a sigil. You recognize it, but not from banners. From earlier, burned faint into the page you did not read. A wolf, but not proud, bending, curled around a family of 3 leaves. Not guarding, not snarling, just holding. You kneel. You don't remember choosing to, but you're already there. It feels right. And it is then that your eye catches what lies beneath the altar. A mark on the floor, imperceptible at first, only revealed because your knee brushed a thread. The strand glows. Almost not at all, but it glows. A candle line, wax hardened then worn by touch into long, looping shapes, like cursive written in fire and forgotten in stone. Your fingers hover near it. The wax is old, partly absorbed now by the floor, but its movement remains. It traces inward, toward a point at the very center of the room. A small hollow beneath the altar. You reach beneath it, into the small space beneath the base, and find something resting there. Not hidden, just waiting, wrapped in folds. You pull it gently free. A bundle, dark velvet, heavy with salt. You unroll it only halfway. Inside, a sigil cloth, shaped by damage. Sewn over, sewn through, stitched and re-stitched as if someone was trying to forget it. Then retaught. The figure visible now only in outline. A wolf, armless, winged only at the gaze. Its eye is open, and in it, a symbol. A crown? No, a tear. Not sorrowful. Witnessing. You fold it again gently, and replace it in the cradle beneath the altar. It is not meant to leave this room, but one small scrap has come free. A loose thread at the corner of the relic, colored the same dark charcoal as stone beneath moon. You take it, without guilt, with permission not spoken, but allowed by presence. You tie it in the fold of your shawl, and this time it warmens. Only just. Something here knows you now. Near the outer edge of the circle, by the nearest banner, a final object rests. A bowl, shallow, made of horn, bleached pale and inscribed only on its underside. Not with words, with curves. The shapes repeat. Not language, not imagery, just motion. The rhythm of someone weaving meaning without knowing it. You keep your hand above it. Inside, hair. White, black, gray, intertwined. Short, weather-smooth, woven without braid. Laid in a pattern only time could explain. You understand. These were wolves. Real ones. Not sigils. Creatures who walked in the long time beneath Winterfell, beside banners, beside bones, beside men. Some names belong not to families, but to companions. Those whose breath warmed the back of your hands in snow. Those who circled fire in sleep, and met death not with roar, but return. You lift one strand, and feel a name, not in sound, in pressure. It folds into your memory blindly. Soft, trusting, sharp. You place it back. No need to carry it. It already came with you. You stand again. The circle breathes in, faintly, then closes. The folds of cloth ripple softly as if the stone has released something old, something incomplete finally laid flat. You lower your head to each banner, not to bow, to remember. Without asking, you step from the chamber. and feel the cloth behind you settle back to stillness. Not forgotten, not erased, only rested, as though every sorrow once stitched into a banner has agreed, softly, to trust you. The corridor out is longer than it should be. It stretches slowly, like night drawn deliberately into morning, and the silence here walks beside you more closely than before. Not a burden, not a shadow, a companion, one that carries your footsteps forward with the kind of softness only understanding can give. You do not rush. You do not question the way. The hall remembers for you, and you are brought upward, not high, not to tower or keep, but simply to breath again, to fresher stone. The walls feel cleaner here, not scrubbed, but rinsed by years. From the floor above, the faintest sound of footsteps echoes once, fading fast. Faint enough to doubt, human enough to hold on to. You round a corner, and the banners greet you again, not ancient ones for halls and heraldry. These are folding flags hung low, stitched from black wool and second cloth. Mourning banners, wisps of memory made formal. You pass under them with care and know where you are. You've come to him now, to the one remembered not first, but sharply, angrily, sadly, proudly. Some say the stones cracked deeper that day. Some say the godswood cried. The real Robb Stark never sat a throne carved of stone, but he was crowned, and the roots beneath the north hold that truth like bone. The north remembers, but sometimes not as the world would wish. The chamber waits ahead, set standard against the wall, a blade, wolf-headed, its edge crooked, not dulled by battle, dulled by age. No name etched into it, just the marks of grip worn into leather by nervous hands. The kind that held not to strike, but to hold together. A table, and upon it, a map. No ink, no place names, just lines, interlocking, fractured, a web, a struggle, a sudden separation. You step closer. There's no written text here, but small sewn banners rest on the corners. Gray, pale blue, pine green, and the largest, red, dried to mute rust. Robb Stark's red, the red of winter before blood, the red of childhood turned to crown. And at the edge of the table, a crown rests. Small, rough, hard wooden tines bound by a single ring of iron, clearly shaped early by heavy hands, then reforged by lighter ones. It's worn, marked, but intact. You approach it like you might approach an old truth you once misremembered. Kinder than rumor, darker than song. It does not gleam. It does not wait to be lifted. It has not been, and perhaps never was. According to the singing halls and show trace stagings, Robb's crown was worn in defiance. A boy king made from fire and fury, styled for vengeance, groomed for ashes and gods. But here, something else is kept. A truth only known to stone and second sons. A truth that never made it to South. He did not ask for it. He accepted it. Not for glory, not even for vengeance, but because the voice that gave it to him shook with trust. In an earlier room, you read the first poem of oath in wax, forgotten by song. Here, you see its echo. Beside the crown, a letter, unopened, the wax seal cracked, unreadable, but set in a small frame, a deeper red than the rest. Pressed into the frame itself, no ink, just one line. We named him not for war. We named him because we could no longer follow shadows. Some older histories, buried under citadel inspection, speak of a split. A moment during the march when the North hesitated. Not with voice, not with blade, but with uncertainty. Loss had come too early. The wolf was gone. The sun burned southward. And in its place, doubt. What they feared most was shape. following smoke disguised as man, crown disguised as cause. So they crowned him not as symbol, but as weight, heaviest of all, to carry the cause backward, to hold the grief, to keep it from becoming blame. You pass to the next alcove, and there, beneath red cloth, his sigil, not sewn into glory, just laid into ash. Gray wolf, bent, as if sniffing a trail he's yet to follow. At his paws, feathers, not raven, not falcon, goose. From the kitchens, tips burned. A joke? Maybe, but more likely hope. A memory of meals shared unburdened. Before banners, before vengeance, you feel the bench beside the table. Sit, not high, low, made for eye level with the sleeping crown. A page rests under the arch of the wood, pulled halfway from its resting notch. You lift it. Pressed leaves mark the edge of its seam, and upon it, a letter never given. Not political, not command, not plea, just, if father had been taken, and not mother, would we still be whole? Would you have called me wolf, or only brother? No name, but the shape of the script matches earlier notations in the Truth Hall, and it ends with a single word. Tell Talisa. You replace it, and the leaves fall closed behind it again. You rise, and step now to the final circle of the chamber. It bears 3 stones, each identical, flat-topped, short, each etched not with names, but with pieces of sigil. One shows a paw, one a crown, one the curve of the neck, as if here they laid out a king in 3 parts, unable to decide which version of him to bury. The Northman, the wolf, the boy, each needed, each lost. You reach the crown once more. Lift it, not high, just off the table. Your arms feel it immediately. The weight is more than wood and iron. It is decision. Place it down again, just long enough to remember it. Because no crown in the north ever truly dies. They only wait for breath. You give it back, and the air settles around the circle of stones. No lament, no dirge, just one simple closure. You step from the chamber, no older, but more witness. And as the banners fade behind you, the fabric on your shoulders shifts. Threads tighten. Your name thickens faintly, not louder, just carried. You carry no torch now. No flame walks ahead of you. No lantern swings behind. And yet the space glows, not in brightness, but in nearness. A kind of fireless illumination that happens only when a place becomes aware of the breath entering it. A hush that forgets to hide. You walk forward with the care of someone not simply entering, but returning. The path slopes softly downward, carved not for procession, but for repetition, an incline walked not once in triumph, but again and again in silence. Ahead, thin roots darken the ceiling where stone softens, and you begin to smell it. Ash, bark, what leaves left too long on stone, but something else too. Old ink, real ink, the kind used before the maester's rotaries, before Ravenskin script work. Dark oak ink, bitter with iron gall, thinned with spit and snowfall. It carries memories, but not through language, through pressure, and that's when you see it. Far ahead, across walls once layered in chalk and oil. Scripture, but not the kind you were ever meant to read. Not meant to be seen, only felt, written beneath snowdrifts. Scripture beneath the snow. You press forward now. The corridor transitions into something more wild. The floor beneath you creaks, not with age, but with layering. Paper, hundreds, no, thousands, of pressed pages, overlapping beneath soot and smooth stone, so many times stepped upon that they've become the floor itself. half buried, half alive. You kneel, glide fingertips across their sealed texture. No letters exposed. Not yet. But then movement. A breath dislodges dust. A halo of pale ink reemerges beneath your palm. A symbol. A sigil. No, 2 hands. Open. Unguarded. Fingers curved slightly inward, as though to hold something not given. The page is soft beneath your fingers, but does not crumble. Somewhere beyond the wall, sound moves. Not echo, not voice. Script. The sound of a quill dragged softly against old vellum. Not to write, to remember. You follow it. The corridor rounds again. A small chamber opens ahead, no wider than a quiet chapel, its corners crowded by lean shelves that do not climb upward, but reach out, low to the stone. Every shelf lined with narrow boxes, thin, cloth-bound, and speckled with the dust of forgotten prayers. You kneel before the nearest. Draw a ribbon. Gently open the case. Inside, parchment sealed in wax. Not labeled, not filed. Each leaf blank at first glance. But when the wax dries, the ink reappears. Time-sensitive script. Protected not from eyes, but from forgetting. And before you now, under frostbite wax, names appear. Not of people, but of acts. The boy who let go the sword to pick up his brother's tooth. The sister who swallowed the last of the birch broth and told no one it was poisoned. The guard who lied about the stolen coat just to make sure she walked home warm. The man who carved the last line of a dead house's words into his armor. Not chronicles, confession stories. Northern lorekeepers long ago devised this hall not for the major deeds, but for the things small enough to be missed, to be buried, to be snowed over. And here, under 700 years of layered snowfall and stone-locked ink, those memories sleep, but not unguarded. You run your hand along the edge of a central mount. Low, circular, built from the bindings of broken tomes, pressed into a table on which lies only one thing, a blade of ice. But shaped not for battle. For wood hilt, etched spine, the edge dulled. This was a scribe's knife, used to shave parchment, trim waste words, shape scrolls when quills failed. And upon the hilt, the name, faint but present, Serum, a name you haven't heard, one that does not appear in any known lineage, scribe order, or tower archive. But here, centered in this silent hall of acts untold, Serum remains etched, with no fanfare, and no epigraph, only a feather beside it. Not black, not raven, white, preserved beneath a sheet of glass, connected not to any bird known to the north above. A myth feather. Some say it fell from the night sky. Others say it came from the last page never turned. A page left blank only for deeds not described. You glance up, and on the largest part of the ceiling, a script has only just appeared. Faint, flickering in breath fog and heartbeat ink. That which is covered is not forgotten. That which melts will one day whisper. You leave the feather undisturbed. The blade remains. So do the stories. You realize now what moves through this place. Not time, but thaw. These pages aren't awaiting readers. They're waiting for seasons. For a spring strong enough to bear their weight. For hands soft enough to lift them without tearing. And you carry them now, in the stitching around your shoulder, in the ash still warming the folds of your sleeve. You bow once, not for reverence, but for continuation. And as you rise again, you feel it. The turning of frost beneath your boots. Not breaking, just reminding. The scripture beneath the snow does not seek light, only understanding. You pass from the room with your pace unchanged, but you do not walk alone. Every confession gathers now behind each step, subtle, soft, pressed into the threadwork of your breath. And far above you, faintly, snow begins to fall. Even here, the snow falls again. Not where wind lives, not beneath the sky, but here, deep below stone and lineage, it returns in thin silence. No cold, no true flake, only the remembrance of snow returning to the ears of those who once heard it first. And this time, there is something in its fall that doesn't lift. Where it lands, it waits. The corridor beyond the crypt hall softens. Each step forward frails beneath your feet, like walking across a woven story. The walls no longer echo. They murmur, as though the very breath you've exhaled now circles back to touch you gently on the shoulder. You walk for a long time, and time does not answer. Then you reach it. The stone settles into place beneath your boots. The doorway is low and narrow. Its shape misguides the eye, not square, not rounded. It curves inward at the top, like something curled in sleep. Faint grooves radiate from its edges like ribs, as though the chamber within is no room at all, but a chest waiting to open. You enter softly, without needing to know why. You've come into the bone of the wall, but not the wall of stone and freezing watch. This is the wall that breathes at night when no eyes guard it. The wall that was dreamed, the wolf who waited. You see it first in the ripple, a single ripple along the far wall, strange, soft, but deliberate, almost like a fold in fabric. It pulses once, and then breathes again. You're not looking at stone, you're looking at ice. Not frozen water, not northern blizzard snow, living ice, smooth and veined with something older than frost. You watch it rise and fall, slightly, in its middle. The ceiling above is arched to mirror it, and upon that ceiling, the barest outline of something not fully carved. A beast, long, broken, sleeping. The room is shaped like a rib cage or a prison. Not one built to keep out, one built to keep in. Across the chamber's edges, old fragments remain, knuckle bones arranged around a stone bowl full of melted wax, old feather quills stabbed into salt-dried hides, and a single chain of black links curled around the base of a shattered spear tip. This is where the wolf waits. You are not told this. You are made aware. In Old Vale speech, not the common tongue, nor the scribal rhythms of the South, there are words that don't translate. Words used when something is too big to name. One of them is Verithin, the held breath before naming. This place is Verithin. He sleeps inside the wall. The wolf once bound, half-remembered, misnamed as myth, told as warning, but never listened to truly. Not entirely. You walk carefully toward the center. There is no altar, no pedestal, only one object, a blindfold, held aloft by two iron stakes shaped like upward-pointed teeth. It is old, fur-lined, but not aged. It's never been used. Its fur is clean. Its cord still carries warmth in the twist. This was not meant to blind, nor to punish. It was made to offer mercy to the wolf, or to those who looked upon him too long. You lean closer. No breath, no voice, but something presses near the back of your throat. A hunger, not yours. Something ancient and immense that does not want to kill. It only wants to know. And knowing, it forgets restraint. And in forgetting, it waits, because waiting is its only kindness. Some say the wall was raised to block the others. Others say it holds them inside. But here, beneath all things known, the wildest tales whisper this. Something else lives inside the wall. Not fixed in form, not given to speech. A dire wolf, shaped beyond the bounds of flesh. Built perhaps from snow fallen when the world first opened its eyes. His fur is ice. His breath is cloud. His thoughts are older than tongue. And he sleeps because we asked him to. Not in words, but in need. You stand before the blindfold and feel it vibrate. Once, the wolf does not wake, but he dreams. And in that dream, you are already walking there. The light dims. The ice moves. A single white strand unfurls from the center of the far wall. Hair? No, more like fiber. It pulses like a heartbeat too slow for years. One beat every century, perhaps. You raise your hand. No intention to touch. No thought of prayer. But your breath catches. This is breath-shaped sleep. And it belongs to the north even more than snow. In times of breaking, old Night's Watch elders told this tale sparingly. That should the wall ever fall, it would not be broken from outside. It would rise upward, lifted beneath by a thing too patient. To meet cruelty with cruelty. Only correction. This is not vengeance waiting. It's truth. A creature made of the forgetting. And it will return when it is remembered fully. Not shouted. Not praised. Felt. And as your breath rests, a single thought arrives. The wolf is stirred not by war, nor kingship, nor calling banners. The wolf inside the wall is only roused by lie, unrest truth. The noise of generations folded too tightly around unspoken things. You feel him stir again, not near you, through you, then stillness. The frost along your arms thickens, but doesn't bite. The cloak tightens across your shoulders. You remember the salt in the stone, the unspoken name in the crypt, the needle left for the girl who bled without scream, the letter never burned, the thread pulled toward the unclaimed vow. All of them are truths, and their weight feeds him. So you turn and leave the chamber slowly, never once looking back. The wolf is still waiting, but not forever, only until you do not return alone. The stone behind you breathes again, and the wolf curls deeper into his drift. The snow continues to fall down onto the stairs. The stairs ahead soften beneath your step, as if you're no longer walking over stone, but over intention, layered and patient, smoothed into hush by the weight of every footstep that came before yours. The torchless dark no longer concerns you. You've come too far, breathed too deeply, leaned too close into the breath beneath the snow. Light is not what guides you now. The chamber behind you vanishes not in shadow, but in memory. It folds itself shut. It wants not to be forgotten, only to be carried. And so you do. The path straightens, draws gently upward again. You feel your cloak ripple, not from wind, but from presence, the heavy stillness of fabric that remembers the rooms it's passed through. The stitches across your shoulders bear shapes that weren't there before. A knot, a pause, a circle made of lines that do not touch. You don't see them. You feel them, pressed faintly against your back like hands that once steadied you across ice. When you pass into the next chamber, it makes itself known not by light, but by echo. A soft rustling, like fabric drawn across wood, or skin brushed against moss. You stop. The sound continues, then stills, exactly when you still. You take a step forward. So does it. Something beyond ahead of you is mimicking your breath, or remembering it. The air tastes dry here, but faintly sweet with dust. Then you see them, the cloths, the folds, the hangings, linen, velvet, wool, row after row, across beams and posts and low ladders, draped from points overhead like lullabies poured into shape. Each cloth is gently moving, not in any wind, not from draft, but response. You walk deeper, and their movements trace yours. Ripples, shivers, soft pulls. Each sheet seems to react to your direction without knowing you, as if they've waited for the return of a rhythm only now resumed. These aren't banners or cloaks, not garments. Memory and weave, textile and trust, echoes woven into old linen. You come to a table low and wide, crude, but covered in gentleness. On it, a needle, still threaded. The spool nearby holds thread the color of frost caught in glass. On the far end of the table, a square of fabric rests, half sewn, corners rolled beneath themselves. You unfold it. Inside, symbols, stitched not into pattern, but into path. Their lines wander, then meet, then circle, then wander again. You recognize the shapes. The birch trees from the hidden hall, the bowl of ash sealed in wax, the velvet notch sewn with needles left on altar, even the fox-toothed dagger drawn from the lips of a weirwood's root. They're all here, but rearranged. Not decorative, chronological. Someone was weaving the story, not telling it, preserving it. You turn, and on the nearest cloth draped from a beam overhead, there it is again. A patch, barely seen. Same stitchwork, same thread, but sewn into a different corner. A variation, as though the memory drifted slightly, folded around the truth. Gave it breath. You step closer, run your hand along the hem. The fabric is worn, but not forgotten. A whisper against your palm. Too old to be southern, too soft to be official. This was made from garments not used for ceremony. It was kept for other reasons, for silence. Cloth in the north is never wasted. It holds scent, voice, tears too small for mention. But this room did not gather the torn for mourning. It gathered them for harmonizing. Some say that when someone vanishes, they don't leave. They become the spaces between linen. That's why old wool is never burned. You pass beneath the bundles hung nearest the wall. One bears a single golden thread, looped once, allowed to dangle almost to the floor, just enough to catch on your sleeve. You lift it gently, never breaking stride. Tied to the end of the thread, a button, faded obsidian, carved in the shape of a pine cone, but with a spiral at its base. You've seen that spiral before, burned into birch, pressed into wax, drawn not in ink, but along grains of wind. Here it dangles from thread, waiting, a single piece of winter's echo. You run the thread through your own cuff and tie it off gently. There's no need for keeping, only for recognition. Ahead of you now, the cloths have parted, revealing an easel, a large linen canvas stretched not for portrait, but for map. Symbolic, not literal. Across it lines, faint, stitched. One leads up, another across. One curls back around. Questions unfold, stitched into paths. And in the corner, Winterfell, not drawn, folded. A square of darker cloth sewn atop the canvas with tight thread at all four corners. A flap. You peel it gently back. And beneath the fold, names. Not of lords, not of kings, but of seamstresses, of wet nurses, of Ravenkeep's ink handlers, of mourners who braided the hair of sons returned from the south, of boys who fixed cloaks before riders were sent to war. And one final name, pressed only once, lower than the rest, upon cloth, not with ink, but blood. You do not read it. You hold it, only long enough to know it. Then the flap folds closed again, and the map becomes quiet once more. A record made not for reading, but for weaving. You pass through the tunnel again, and every cloth you brushed breathes out behind you. Unbidden, not farewelling, only following. For memory does not rest where it was made. It walks with those who remember. The fabric across your shoulders glows slightly. No light, only heat, only thread, only the echo of hands who stitched you quietly. Back, into story. The cloths still move behind you. You do not turn, but you feel them, rippling faintly in that breathless rhythm found only in silence, so deep it has learned how to listen back. Your breath catches on something invisible, like walking through a veil still drying from sorrow. It does not stop you. It just lingers, threadless now, but remembered. You move forward again, and the low passage narrows with purpose. Here, the stone is grooved again, not carved recently, but remembered open by snowfall and retreat. The turns are sharper, less organic. You smell stone now, old and dry, flavored in dust and something stranger. Earth, lamp oil, parchment dusted in centuries of fog. But beneath it, fog itself. You know the scent, not mist. Fog, old fog, the kind that's lost its shape and gone still. You begin to hear it before you feel it, not in wind, but in low vibration, collarbone dashed deep to an atmosphere more than a sound. This is the vault near where the bell tower once collapsed, now sealed by salt, root, and memory. The maps do not describe it, but it is here. And today the veil has thinned. You step inside. It's not a room. It's a breath held so long it turned to space. No walls, not really, just suggestion. Fog clings everywhere, dense as muslin, not damp, not warm, not passing.it stays, curled around the base of outcroppings that might be stone, might be sculpture.it shifts with the slow arch and fall of your breath. You are not alone here, but no figures greet you, only presence. You take one step deeper in, and at last, sensation. Cold wraps around your ankles like a kindly shroud, tugging not to pause you, but to steady you. This place was not lost. It was told to time in such a way that time politely declined to enter. The first whisper comes half left, not sound. Fog itself finds a voice. A single word whispered in intonation, not tongue. Winter, but not winter as the world knows it. This is not season. It doesn't fall here. It speaks. And when it speaks, it remembers. You walk deeper. A plinth rises from the haze. Bare. Upon it, a ring of fur, salted and curled at its ends. Not decorative. Practical. Lined in thread from at least 3 banners. The shape of something once warm under armor. You lift it, and beneath it, a mark in frost. A spiral again, but cracked now, as though stretched too far to close. As though something shaped it once, forgot it, and reshaped it again by memory alone. You see other plinths in the mist now. Taller. One bears a helm, split straight down the front. Each piece set flat, like pages turned apart. The inner lining bears a name. Asterisk Aaron, or something mistaken for it. Asterisk. At the next, only feathers. Gray, none black. Ravens did not gather here. This was the fog's song. The silence where breath could nest and not be winged again. Then a fourth, this one wider. Upon it, cloth, wrapped in rope, oil burned, twisted into roll. Almost undecipherable. Pressed beneath stone. You shift the top edge and see a mask, not of warrior, of weather. Face stitched from leather and waxed cotton. Once sealed tight to the mouth and nose so the breath could be caught and heard. Seers were them long ago. Not the dream seers. The fog listeners. If you could catch the fog's silence and breathe it back, then winter was said to change. Not to spring, but to a gentler snow. As you kneel here, the mist curls higher. It almost speaks in visuals now. You see them, ghosting across the air in shapes neither full nor empty. A tent, bleached, sagging in wind. A girl crouched beside the pines, listening into the ground. A spear tip broken 3 times and buried with hair. None are full stories, but each is a breath let loose into the fog. And that fog remembers. That was the first gift of winter. It wasn't death. It was persistence. The North never asked to be steeled. It was taught to carry. Not alone. Together. You stand again, and the sound shifts. Not wind. A whisper with shape. Listen. Now another. She said it first. Soft. Faint. Disintegrating as you turn. A child? No. Nothing living. Just fog remembering breath. You step into the center of the vault. The air coils like thread beside your skin, trailing ribbon-like along your fingertips. And at the center, rhyme has begun to form. A circle beneath your feet. Not carved. Frozen. And beneath it, stone. Inscribed barely. A single glyph, recognizable only if you've seen it before. A spiral, ending not in center, but reaching one, then opening again. Around its base, sigils, wooden, eroded, bound. They circle the spiral like columns might surround a hearth. Symbols turn to watch. You realize now what this room is. It is not a shrine. It is a listening post. A place where fog was gathered like cloth, smoothed, folded, and shaped into echo. Old watchers came through here and let secrets carve themselves into the weather. So ice remembered, even when the trees were cut, even when the names were buried, when they could no longer trust voices. They left their truths in the fog. You bow your head, not low, just enough that your breath joins it. And then, movement. The spiral beneath you, once dim, glows in snowlight silver. No warmth, just knowledge. The fog is speaking again. Only this time it waits. It asks back, not in question, not in demand. In echo, you give back only what you carried. Breath softened by thread. Salt lullabies. Salt legends. The girl who vanished to ravens. The blade written once, then hidden in ash. You do not come here with name, but the fog folds around you anyway, marking passage, marking return. And as you lift your head again, you notice something in the corner of your vision, something swirling up and away. A thin loop of frost dust, lit not by flame, but memory. It lifts to the ceiling, untouchable, then disappears. The fog has spoken, and now it tucks what you gave it, safe into cold corners. Not even death will find. You leave the chamber lighter than when you entered, but never hollow, never, only watched by what remembers, to breathe for you. The fog lingers longer than usual behind you. It gathers at the doorway, then does not cross. When you look back, it has already lost its line, dissolved into drift, pulled back into the walls like a sigh whispered into sleep. There is no parting, no closing of the veil, just a sense, deep and quiet, that what needed to breathe has breathed. You move forward, with the weight of so many silences sewn into your cloak, salt prayers, ribbon threads, ash folds, script buried in snow, and stories told not by voice but by the thrum of stone. You carry no torch, no page, only the hush that follows truth. Up another stair, curved like a root strangled in darkness. Your fingers trail the wall as you climb. The stone is older now. You can feel its pulse, dim and dull, like light seen through water. The air changes again. This time it sharpens. sharper than the cold of wind, sharper than the breath after dream. It cuts not into skin, but into memory. You enter another square chamber, built wrong, deliberately lopsided, one wall offset as if pulled away from the others or hiding from something. Your breath clouds in the still air, and in that cloud, a figure, not present, but carved, a statue, positioned against the misaligned wall like an afterthought. No pedestal, no nameplate, just presence, metal dulled into ash. A tall man, or the suggestion of one, covered in layers of what might be armor. The eyes are not open, but not closed either. Only one defining thing stands out. His helm, not lifted, not removed, fixed, sealed. A face never shown. Hands at the side, one clasped, the other cupped, holding something. Nothing visible, but you cannot look away. This must be the one. The Stark not named in halls, not carved beneath Winterfell, not spoken of in bedtime bloodlines, but known in the deep hush of those who keep things sealed where light cannot justify them. They called him many things. The Stone Lord, the Faceless Winter, the Lord who never took his helm off. But none of those were names. They were attempts. Only one truth ever survived the generations. No one alive saw his face, and those who did never said what they saw. You step closer to the statue, and a gust stirs. From nowhere, a breath pressed from behind the statue like a cough from long-dead lungs. Something rasps across the room, not voice. Metal, an echo, a whisper, not spoken, but shaped. You lean in toward the cupped hand, and for a heartbeat, you see it, the faintest shimmer, held in the hollow of that iron palm. A glint of silver blue. Not a coin, not a seal, an eye, not real, not alive, but carved glass, set inside as though once part of something living. Then gone. The shimmer fades, but your breath has already hit the helm, and as it does, your reflection shifts. Not overlaid, not mimicry, revealed, and you understand. The helm was not forged to hide. It was forged to protect you. Whatever face might have lied beneath, it was sealed away to keep the north straight, to keep meaning from becoming shape. The oldest sleeping histories say this Stark knew something terrible, not from war, but from within blood and bone, that his eyes witnessed something behind the wall that seared shape from meaning and left only truth. Not a truth you can carry in word, a truth you wear like burden. The statue remains still, but a stone just beyond it, one you hadn't seen, begins to gleam at its edge. You draw near. It's not a stone exactly. It's a skin, placed on rock, flattened waxed leather ringed with rusted trim. A helm lining, removed, placed gently on a bed of fur. You realize now, he did take his helm off. Once. Right here. And only here. After. And whoever placed the lining back into cloth did so with both fear and care. A child's stitch binds the edge. Uneven threading. Trembling precision. And nearby? A ribbon. Blue once. Gray now. You lift it slowly. Unfurl it. And embroidered in ragged thread. He took the burden in his mouth. No name. No title. Not even a sentence. Just a belief. He never forced truth on you. He ate it. Swallowed it whole. Sealed the face behind the helm. And became weather for the rest of us. You stand again. Lay the ribbon within your palm. It warms. Then cools. You fold it gently into the innermost lining of your cloak, close to where your ribs press together. The statue breathes again. Not in movement. In metaphor. And on the wall behind it, where shadow meets shadow, you see what no torch could show. A negative. A belief etched reversely. Revealed only by what is missing. Carved faintly, edge to edge. Some truths cannot live in tongues. Asterisk only in silence and armor. You step back from the helm. You bow, not from reverence, from understanding. And as you leave, your own cloak rustles behind you. Fabric stiff enough now to ring, like ice, or thought, or iron. And for one brief step, your own shadow helmets itself upon the wall, then fades. Return to breath, not story. Yet, the corridors are empty now. Nothing presses behind you. No wind trails your steps. No echo mimics your breath. Even your shadow, so long your silent companion, has softened against the stone, stretched wider than it should, fading at the calf, then vanishing altogether. You are not alone, but you are the only shape here that remembers moving. You do not know how long it has been since you passed through the first gate, the page that curled outward into sleep behind the arch, the hush that carried you through folded cloth and root-veined silence, the names sewn into cloaks too threadbare to wear again, the snow that sang a boy's name without sound, the salt that mourned not lost but keeping. They all follow you now, inside. And you begin to feel Winterfell folding down behind you. Not collapsing, not closing, but settling, one breath at a time. You are passing into the final hollow now. And if none welcome you here, it is not because they do not know you. It is because everything here knows you already. You cross under a rounded arch with no markings, not even where. And the air dims to nothing. No light, no shift, no aroma but coolness, dry, clean, faintly waxed. At first, you think the room is empty. But then you listen, close, and you hear it. Linen brushing against wood. A soft creak of cold joints. Rope slipping just once in its knot. This is not a chamber built by kings. It is not beneath the high tower. It rests under nothing. It is the forgotten floor, the breath below dream. It is the wind down, as the trees outside still for the night, and all the pages inside you nap gently in their bindings. And in the center, a table so bare, it pales into the room. Atop it, one object, a candle, unlit, short, wick bent, mottled wax stories trapped inside. Near it, fabric, folded once, then once again. You can't call it linen. It's too thin, more slumber than thread. And at its corner, a seal. Old, hard to see. A direwolf, yes, but shrunk with time, tamed of its teeth. In the far corner, a single chair, not facing the table, turned slightly, just so, eased into its final angle. The kind of movement done by someone who's said all they've come to say. You walk past it. Let your hand brush the top rail. No name carved in. No initials. Only the shallow groove of 5 fingers and countless prayers. You gather what remains of your movement and step into the circle of candlelight, though no flame burns. The walls here bear nothing. No symbols. No cloaks. No ironwood, only shadow, quiet shadow, folded like fabric in the corners. You approach the candle and stoop. You read the carving once traced delicately beneath the wax base. Speak softest now. You do. Your voice, a whisper without word, and the room hears it. Something changes, not around you. Within, wax softens. The cloth on the table shifts inward, and the memory of fire warms your palm. As if by story alone, you have struck a match inside your ribcage. Your hand rests beside the pillow of parchment beneath the flame. Blank, sealed at the edge with wax, so aged it no longer clings. This one was never opened, never folded. It's meant to be left, untouched. A kindness. A caution, so you do not write, but the edges curl as though read all the same. And you know what it says. In the linen, quiet as snowfall. Sleep. One word. Few dare write it. But here, now it is allowed. Sanctioned. Loved beyond language. You sit. You are not in chair or prayer. You are in peace. A shape without outline. Drifting. Every thread you've gathered has dimmed to warmth now. The ink has dried. The wax softens. The breath slows. And Winterfell breathes not around you. With you. A final curl of air twirls near your cheek. Not cold. Not warm. Just enough to move the leaves outside the stone. You fold the page. Not for writing. Only to hold and sleep. And sleep comes easily here. You feel cloth slide over your eyes. You are not hidden. You are not alone. You are folded in. The map has curled close behind you. And the wolf sleeps. Far below. Now, so do you. That is the end, sweet dreams. If this story stayed with you tonight, tell us where your mind wandered. That's how memories live on. Good night.